Arthur POV. Seeing Rocky, I couldn't help but think about the other cast of The Demonfather, Johnny Devilkin, Charles Flirt, Vivienne Westwood, Richard, and the rest. Word on the street was that they were all riding high on the film's success, their schedules packed with new projects. Oddly enough, Rocky was the only one I hadn't heard much about since the film blew up. I just assumed he was cashing in like the others, enjoying his newfound fame and fortune. As I poured Rocky a cup of the popular Morningstar tea, curiosity got the better of me. So, old-timer, how's life been treating you since The Demonfather hit it big? Rocky let out a long-suffering sigh, taking a sip of his tea. Terrible, if I'm being honest. I blinked, caught off guard. Looking at his fancy new threads, I couldn't help but be skeptical. Terrible? You're dressed like you own half the city. What gives? He shook his head, a rueful smile on his face. Looks can be deceiving, kid. Had to hire someone to run the theater, can't even show my face there without causing a riot. Been cooped up at home most days, dodging fans like they're debt collectors. I winced, starting to get the picture. That bad, huh? You have no idea, Rocky continued, warming to his tale of woe. Went to my cousin's birthday celebration a few weeks back. By the end of it, my hand was cramping from all the autographs, and my face felt like it might crack from all the smiling for pictures. Exhausting doesn't even begin to cover it. I felt a pang of guilt. I'd been so caught up in my own whirlwind, I hadn't stopped to think about how Rocky's life might have changed. Sounds rough, I offered lamely, not sure what else to say. Rocky nodded, a hint of his old self peeking through. Only recently, now that the Demonfather hype has died down a bit, have I been able to poke my head out without being mobbed. It's a relief, let me tell you. I nodded, trying to piece things together. Huh. I figured you'd be drowning in acting projects by now. Rocky let out a dry chuckle. Hard to get project when you're not signed with an agency, kid. I nearly choked on my tea. Wait, what? You haven't signed with anyone yet? Nope, Rocky shrugged. Then, with a sly grin, why? You offering? Me? Nah, I don't. I mean, I don't have an agency, I stammered, not wanting to overstep. Rocky leaned back, eyeing me thoughtfully. You know, Your Highness, with your studio on the rise, ever consider starting your own agency? The question caught me off guard. My own agency? I muttered, the wheels in my head starting to turn. Yeah, Rocky nodded. Look, I've had offers, but I don't trust them. But you? If you started something, I'd sign in a heartbeat. I stroked my chin, the idea taking root. You know, that's not half bad. Could bring Furful, Imcrag, Kurt, Vivienne, the whole gang under one roof. Rocky's eyes lit up. So, you're gonna do it? I chuckled, the possibilities unfolding. Why not? It'd be good for the studio. Plus, I wouldn't have to shell out a fortune every time I want to cast Furful or the others. Well, Rocky grinned, looks like someone's learned to play the game. I suggest it 'cause I want representation, but you were more interested in saving money. Hey, someone's got to watch the bottom line, I shot back with a grin. Especially with the kingdom's new films tax taking a bite out of my profits. Rocky nodded, his expression turning serious. Yeah, read about that. Tough break, kid. No sooner had I decided to start an agency than I was knee-deep in legal jargon. I'd hired a legal team from the well-known Demon law firm to get Hellfire Agency off the ground. Their job? Navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of obtaining a license from the Morningstar Kingdom's local government. This wasn't going to be like starting Hellfire Studios, where my princely status had greased the wheels. Now, as an exiled prince, I was just another schmuck with a dream, albeit one with a famous last name. To speed things up, I decided to pay a visit to my dear sister, Lucy Morningstar. Sure, she was just the Minister of Economic Development and Tourism, but she was still a princess with government connections. Time to cash in on some family favors. I strolled into the imposing chamber of infernal commerce, watching the government drones do a double take. You'd think they'd never seen an exiled prince before. I'm here to see Lucy Morningstar, I announced to the receptionist, trying to sound important. She barely looked up from her hell phone. Do you have an appointment? Then you can wait, she cut me off, reaching for the telephone. I'll call her office. I slumped into a chair in the lobby, watching as she lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. After what felt like an eternity of bureaucratic purgatory, she called out, Mr. Arthur? I perked up, Yes? The princess will see you now. Follow me. As we trudged down the hallway, I couldn't help but gawk at the propaganda plastered on the walls. Morningstar, the hope of all demons, one poster proclaimed. Another assured, we care for all demons. We don't judge you for how evil you are. My personal favorite? Let's support our king's plan of reunification. Yeah, because that's going so well. It was surreal, my first time in this bastion of bureaucracy. I'd spent my whole life avoiding places like this. We finally reached a red door, and the receptionist gave it a perfunctory knock. Enter, Lucy's voice rang out, crisp and authoritative. The receptionist gestured at the golden doorknob, clearly done with playing tour guide. I took the hint and let myself in. Lucy's office was, well, opulent doesn't quite cover it. It looked like a dragon's hoard had mated with a luxury hotel suite. So this is where the people's tax money goes, I thought, trying not to roll my eyes. What brings you here? Lucy asked, barely looking up from her desk. Her name tag, all fancy demon calligraphy on gold, probably cost more than most demons make in a month. I plopped down in the chair across from her, abandoning any pretense of formality. Just here to ask for a few favors, sis. That got her attention. Favors, she echoed, eyebrow raised. I laid it out for her, my plans for the agency, the red tape I was facing, the whole 9 yards. You want to start your own talent agency? Lucy's surprise was almost comical. Why in the 9 hells would you want to deal with all that oversight and regulation? I paused, mulling it over. She had a point. This wasn't like starting Hellfire Stories, a book publishing company. This was a whole new level of bureaucratic nightmare. But I'd come too far to back down now. Look, I said, leaning forward, having my own stable of actors just makes sense. It'll streamline everything for my future projects. It sounded weak even to my own ears, but it was the best I could come up with on the spot. Lucy's skeptical look told me she wasn't buying it, but hey, at least I was trying. Now came the real challenge, convincing my by-the-book sister to bend those rules just a little bit for her black sheep brother. Arthur POV. Lucy's interrogation felt like it lasted for 1 point. Come on, I paid a fortune, can't throw me this one bone? She sighed, her expression a mix of exasperation and something else. Pity, maybe? I can't just bend the rules for you, Arthur. You're a civilian now, remember? Her words hit like a bucket of ice water. I was about to slink out when she dropped another bombshell. By the way, I've been hearing rumors. Did you really bribe the MFF to sweep the awards? I froze, then turned to face her. Looking her dead in the eye, I said, bribed? The MFF? Come on, Lucy. Everyone knows they're as incorruptible as they come. It's not possible, and you know it. She nodded, but her eyes were sharp. I hope you're telling the truth. Bribing an event like the MFF, that's not just frowned upon. It's asking for a world of trouble. Don't worry about it, I said, trying to keep my voice light as I made my exit. But inside, I was seething. Days crawled by, and I was no closer to solving my agency problem. With Lord of the Rings set to release in 2 weeks, I knew the value of actors like Furfel, Shuffle, and Rupert would skyrocket. I needed to act fast. Just when I was about to throw in the towel, an unlikely savior appeared, Anubis Flameworth, a local mob boss with a surprising soft spot for cinema. He offered to help navigate the legal hurdles, no questions asked. I was skeptical at first, getting in bed with the mob wasn't exactly on my to-do list. But Anubis worked miracles. In just 2 days, he had Hellfire Agency up and running, all above board. Well, as above board as anything involving the mob can be. With the legal stuff sorted, I snagged a cheap building in the district nobody wanted and set up shop. My newly hired team hit the ground running, negotiating with the agencies holding Furfel, Vivian, and the others. Meanwhile, I wasted no time signing Imcrag, Kurt, and Rocky. Imcrag and Kurt were priority. With Lord of the Rings still unreleased here, they were flying under the radar. For now, the ink was barely dry on the contracts when I saw Imcrag and Kurt's jaws drop. You'd think I'd offered them the keys to the kingdom instead of a measly 30 grand up front. This is for real? Imcrag stammered, his eyes wide as saucers. I couldn't help but smirk. Welcome to Hellfire Agency, boys. Their pens couldn't move fast enough. In the blink of an eye, I had 2 new talents under my belt. It was a start, but I knew the real challenge lay ahead. Later that day, I found myself in my new office at Hellfire Agency. The place was still a work in progress, but I was determined to give it a different vibe from my Hellfire Studio setup. New venture, new me, right? I'd hung up some self-drawn posters of the Demonfather, Lord of the Rings, and even Dragon Ball, back at the studio. But here? This place was getting the VIP treatment. My fingers traced the cool metal of the lunar laurel as I placed it on my desk, right next to the celestial crown. Not too shabby for an exiled prince, if I do say so myself. The rest of the Moonlight Film Festival awards found their homes on the shelves, a testament to how far I'd come. I was lost in thought, adjusting a crooked frame, when Klein burst through the door like he had hellhounds on his tail. "What's up?" I asked, not bothering to turn around. Klein's voice was strained. "Boss, we've hit a snag. The agency's holding Furful, Vivian, Schaffel, and the others? They're not budging." I nodded, unsurprised. This was exactly why I'd been in such a rush to get Hellfire Agency off the ground, even stooping to asking my greedy sister for help. With Lord of the Rings set to hit theaters in 2 weeks, I knew the value of those actors would skyrocket. Especially Furful as Arwen, Schaffel as Galadriel, and Rupert as Boromir. We needed to move fast. I leaned back in my chair, eyeing Klein. "Look, this isn't unexpected. Here's what we'll do, ask them to name their price. If it's steep, we'll negotiate. Find their bottom line." Klein nodded, a determined glint in his eye. "Got it, boss. I'll get on it right away." As he hurried out, I turned to the window, my mind a whirlwind of possibilities and potential pitfalls. The clock was ticking. In just 2 weeks, Lord of the Rings would hit screens across the Morningstar Kingdom. I needed to move fast, especially when it came to Furful, Schaffel, and Rupert. Their stock was about to soar, and I wanted them under the Hellfire Agency banner before that happened. The next few days were a blur of negotiations and number crunching. My team worked around the clock, juggling offers and counteroffers. It was like trying to herd cats, if the cats were shrewd agents guarding their golden geese. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of back and forth, we made a breakthrough. The agency's resolve crumbled when I put serious money on the table, 200,000 for Furful, 50,000 for Schaffel, and 80,000 for Rupert. It was a hefty sum, but I knew it would pay off in the long run. As I signed the final contract, bringing these talented actors under the Hellfire Agency umbrella, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. We'd done it. The core of my Lord of the Rings cast was now part of my growing empire. Of course, there was still work to be done. Charles Flirt, Johnny Devilkin, and Vivian Westwood were still out there, free agents waiting to be scooped up. But I wasn't in a rush. They'd come around eventually. 2 days later, I welcomed Furful to my office. As she stepped in, her eyes widened with surprise. "Wait, it was your agency that bought out my contract?" she asked, a mix of disbelief and amusement in her voice. I couldn't help but grin. "Yep. Hellfire Agency is officially open for business. And let's just say, acquiring your talents wasn't exactly cheap." A slow smile spread across Furful's face. "So you're the mysterious new agency everyone at my old place was buzzing about." She paused, her expression softening. "You know, I was a bit worried at first. Didn't know if I was being handed off to some shady outfit." I chuckled, leaning back in my chair. "Shady? Well, you're not entirely wrong. Now that you're under my agency, I'll be saving a fortune on casting fees for my future projects. You work for me now, remember?" Furful rolled her eyes, but I could see the amusement dancing in them. "You're terrible, you know that?" The streets of Furland City hummed with early morning activity. Demons, elves, and dwarves bustled about, starting their daily routines. On every street corner and shop window, film posters fought for attention, but one dominated the landscape: Lord of the Rings. A group of demon workers who knew one another paused in front of the large poster, whispering quietly among themselves. "Isn't this the film that won all those awards at the Elf Festival?" Stocky Demon asked, squinting at the image. A demon with horns that curled like rams nodded. "Yeah, it's that exiled prince's second film. Causing quite a stir, from what I hear." An imp, clutching a newspaper, sneered as he approached his colleagues. "Load of rubbish, if you ask me. Says right here in the Demon's Daily that it's a steaming pile of dragon dung." He tapped the paper for emphasis. One of his coworkers shrugged. "Why don't we get tickets? I'm curious about this award-winning film, rigged or not." "February 22nd, 1272, he read aloud. After a moment's consideration, he shrugged. Ah, why not? Can't deny I'm a bit curious myself. As they moved on, more passers-by stopped to gawk at the poster. The buzz around Lord of the Rings was impossible to ignore. While some demon newspapers praised it for bringing glory to their entertainment industry, the major outlets were tearing it to shreds. Yet, despite the negative press, or perhaps because of it, demons couldn't stop talking about the film. They might claim to believe the bad reviews, but there was an undercurrent of curiosity that even the harshest criticism couldn't quash. Days slipped by, and February 22nd crept closer. The major media outlets patted themselves on the back, convinced their smear campaign against Lord of the Rings was working its dark magic. Everywhere you turned, demons were muttering about how awful the film was bound to be. Titan Pictures, having joined forces with the demon media moguls to boycott Lord of the Rings, were practically purring with satisfaction. Their poison even spread through the Evros continent like wildfire. The last one came complete with a photo of Caden and Arthur from the Moonlight Film Festival, the very moment when Caden had actually praised the film. But the article twisted the context entirely, claiming Caden's animated expression was one of disgust rather than admiration. It was a blatant misrepresentation, but people eager for scandal ate it up without question. As the release date loomed, more and more demons in the Morningstar Kingdom bought into the hype. "Can't wait to see the ex-prince fall on his face," became a common refrain. After the unexpected success of The Demonfather, many were eager to see Arthur brought low. Speculation ran rampant, insults flew freely, and then, the moment of truth arrived. February 22nd, 1272 dawned, bright and full of possibility. It wasn't the wide release Arthur had dreamed of. The major studios had flexed their muscles, strong-arming key cinemas into rejecting the film. The Furland Grand Theatre, owned by Rocky himself, was buzzing with activity. A sea of demons stretched around the block, all eager to catch Lord of the Rings. The sheer number of attendees caught many off guard. The fiend demon named Jimmy scratched his horns, bewildered. "I thought this film was supposed to be trash. What's with the crowd?" His demoness girlfriend, Lola, shrugged. "Morbid curiosity, maybe? Everyone wants to see just how bad it is." "Huh," Jimmy mused. "Guess a lot of folks are itching to watch that exiled prince crash and burn." Lola snorted. "You said it. Demons will pay good money to see that weakling fall flat on his face." After what felt like an eternity, they finally settled into their seats. The theater hummed with anticipation as the lights dimmed. From the moment the film began, expectations were shattered. The scaling resolution alone drew gasps of awe, but it was the world and story that truly captivated the audience. "I can't believe they killed off Boromir just like that," a demon with bat-like wings lamented. His friend scoffed. "He had it coming. Aragorn's the real deal, now that's a king I could get behind." "But what about that dragon at the end?" a young demoness chimed in. "I need to know what happens next." As they filed out of the theater, the conversation continued to buzz around them. Gone was the anticipation of witnessing a disaster. Instead, demons found themselves dissecting characters, debating plot points, and speculating about sequels. The next morning, Ashen Grey sat in his plush office at Demon Pictures, basking in the glow of yesterday's box office numbers. Their latest film, strategically released to compete with Lord of the Rings, had pulled in a respectable $600,000. Sure, taxes would take a bite, but Ashen wasn't worried. He allowed himself a smug smile. The major studio's decision to boycott Lord of the Rings and block its access to key cinemas seemed to be paying off. His film was enjoying a cushy run in 4,210 theaters across the kingdom. Just as he was about to pour himself a celebratory glass of whiskey, his secretary burst through the door like she had hellhounds on her tail. "If we could get our first prototype computer working, maybe we could showcase it at the Electronics Expo in Empirica's Apple City." It was still a few months out, plenty of time to sign up and secure a booth. The possibilities made my head spin. Arthur POV. The studio buzzed with excitement as I welcomed Fart and Kyle. Kyle had just flown in yesterday, curious to see how Lord of the Rings was performing in the Morningstar Kingdom. His eyes were wide with disbelief as he blurted out, "It's incredible. 7 million in a day with only 2,000 cinemas? And without even securing the major theaters? How in the name of all that's unholy did we pull that off?" Kyle nodded, still looking dazed. "I get the numbers, but, with all the media backlash? I thought we were toast. Didn't I tell you?" I chimed in, unable to resist. "Where there's sugar, there's ants. No matter how many people try to convince the ants it's salt, they'll figure out the truth eventually." Fard and Kyle exchanged a look that screamed, "Here he goes again with the weird metaphors." Kyle snorted, a hint of worry in his eyes. "Yeah, but you're the underdog demons love to hate. Aren't you concerned?" I just laughed, feeling more confident than ever. The game was far from over, but we'd just scored one hell of a point. Let them hate. As long as they were buying tickets, they could curse my name all they wanted. Our conversation was interrupted when Lilith poked her head in. "Boss, there's someone here to see you. Says he's from the Horn Kingdom. Interested in distributing Lord of the Rings there." The Horn Kingdom. Now that was interesting. A small independent kingdom, technically under Morningstar rule, but with its own government and economy. They'd been a thorn in my father's side for years, clinging stubbornly to their autonomy. The fiend demon in a sharp suit strode in, all business. "Jerry Yan, Righteous Film Studio. Pleasure to meet you, Arthur Morningstar." I nodded, gesturing to a chair. "Likewise. Please, have a seat." I introduced Fard and Kyle as Jerry settled in. "I'll cut to the chase," Jerry said. "We want Lord of the Rings distribution rights for the Horn Kingdom." I pushed my breakfast around my plate, half listening to Bobby's latest tirade. My dear brother was in rare form today, practically frothing at the mouth about Arthur's latest success, but I couldn't care less about Bobby's bruised ego. My thoughts were on Arthur, the brother I'd worried about since his exile. I'd expected him to struggle, to fade into obscurity. Instead, he was turning the entertainment world on its head. I'd just seen Lord of the Rings, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. The story was captivating, but more than that, I found myself wondering about the world Arthur had created. Did rings of power like that really exist somewhere? And how in the world had my weak brother managed to wrangle all those orcs into his film? Not to mention that dragon. As Bobby continued to rant, I tuned him out completely. Arthur had always been different, always been underestimated. But now? Now he was proving everyone wrong, and I couldn't have been prouder. Lord of the Rings' first-day box office sent shockwaves through the public and media alike. $7 million was no small feat, leaving those who had bought into the negative press stunned. Word spread like wildfire through the Morningstar Kingdom. Contrary to the scathing reviews, Lord of the Rings wasn't just good, it was great. Viewers raved about the visuals, the story, and the overall quality of the film. This grassroots praise catapulted the second-day earnings to a staggering $8.1 million. In just 48 hours, Lord of the Rings had amassed $15.1 million, a feat many had deemed impossible. The ripples of this success spread far beyond the Morningstar Kingdom. Major countries like Empirica and Wales found themselves slack-jawed at the numbers. The elven kingdoms, whose entertainment industry stood toe-to-toe with humans, reacted with similar astonishment. Even the Craft Kingdom, the dwarven realm second only to humans and elves in entertainment, but unrivaled in sculpting and architecture, took notice of the $15.1 million earnings. Despite the smear campaign by major outlets worldwide, news of the film's financial triumph contradicted their narrative. The global audience, initially dismissive of Lord of the Rings, now burned with curiosity. What was this film that could defy such odds and capture the hearts of millions? In the meantime, as Lord of the Rings fever swept through the Morningstar Kingdom, speculation began to spread like wildfire. In one high school cafeteria, a group of young demons huddled together, their voices low. "Hey, guys," Oliver, a young wolf demon, leaned in conspiratorially. "Do you all believe in teacher envy? About those rings from Lord of the Rings actually existing somewhere in our world?" Kong, a monkey demon, and Kroko, a scale demon, exchanged skeptical glances. They remembered their history teacher's passionate ramblings about the film's connections to ancient artifacts. Kong scratched his fur, scoffing. "Come on, Ollie. Envy was probably just trying to make his boring history lessons more interesting. You know how he gets." But Oliver's eyes gleamed with excitement. "That's what I thought too, but check this out." He reached into his bag, pulling out a worn, leather-bound book. "I found this in the school library." "Really?" Oliver nodded, his tail swishing excitedly. "It said that in ancient times, there were rings that could hold a ton of stuff inside them. And that's not all, they gave the wearer crazy magical powers and made them super strong." Kroko and Kong leaned in, their skepticism melting away. They snatched the book, flipping through the pages eagerly. Oliver pointed out the passages, and sure enough, there they were, rings of unimaginable power. Kong grinned, a mischievous glint in his eye. "An operation. We'll call it the Lord of the Rings operation. We'll go on a hunt for these ancient artifacts." Just think, if we find them, we'll be so powerful, we won't even need school anymore. It wasn't just high school demons getting caught up in the ring frenzy. Adults across the kingdom had started their own treasure hunts, seeking the powerful artifacts depicted in Lord of the Rings. Days slipped by, and what had started as a small spark of curiosity was slowly but surely growing into a wildfire. Newspapers began featuring stories of demons convinced that the rings from the film existed somewhere in their world. Luke Morningstar, king of the demon realm, fixed the minister with a cold stare as he accepted the paper. "My king," the minister began, his voice quavering, "this Lord of the Rings film is causing unrest in our kingdom. The mastermind behind all of this is none other than the former prince, Arthur. It must be intentional, a form of revenge for his exile." Luke's eyes scanned the newspaper, his expression hardening. The headline screamed of a new obsession sweeping the kingdom, demons young and old alike searching for magical rings. But it was the next part that made the king's blood run cold. The article highlighted a crucial scene from the film where Boromir addressed Arthur's character, Aragorn, as king. The article writer speculated that this was Arthur's way of announcing his intention to claim the throne in the future. 5 days. That's all it took for the exiled prince's Lord of the Rings to turn the kingdom on its head. The numbers were staggering: $31 million in just 5 days, blowing the Demonfather's success clean out of the water. Even for a hardened mob boss like me, those figures made my eyes bulge. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pride. After all, I'd lent a hand when the prince set up his talent agency. But Arthur and I both knew my help wasn't charity. We had an agreement, a favor for a favor. What I wanted wasn't outrageous, just a little boost in the entertainment world. As my driver pulled up to Hellfire Studios, I straightened my tie. "We're here, boss," he announced. I nodded, stepping out with my 2 men flanking me. The receptionist greeted us with a plastic smile. "I'm here to see Mr. Morningstar," I said smoothly. "Do you have an appointment?" she chirped. "Indeed I do. The prince and I have a little chat scheduled." After confirming, she led us to Arthur's office, but stopped my men short. "I'm afraid only you have clearance, sir." I waved off my guys' frowns. "It's fine, boys. Wait here." Stepping into Arthur's office was like entering another world. Posters plastered the walls. Lord of the Rings dominated one wall, but what caught my eye was this weird drawing with spiky-haired. It reminded me of something I'd seen in Empirica, this new thing they call comics. They're growing in popularity over there, colored drawings telling a story, starting to give novels a run for their money. Interesting stuff, though not really my taste. But the Demonfather poster? Now that was my absolute favorite, and there he was, ex-Prince Arthur. A chill ran down my spine as I took him in, his posture, his expression, those eyes that seemed both indifferent and intensely emotional at once. It was like looking at Michael Corleone in the flesh. He sat there like he owned the world, and maybe he did. After watching Lord of the Rings, I couldn't shake the feeling that Arthur was sitting on a throne, not just an office chair. The ambition to be king someday radiated off him like heat from a furnace. Even as a seasoned mob boss, I felt a twinge of discomfort, a flicker of fear. But I couldn't show weakness. Squaring my shoulders, I approached. "How are you doing, Mr. Morningstar?" Arthur's smile was warm, but his eyes remained calculating. "Everything's fine, Mr. Flameworth," he replied smoothly. With a gesture, he added, "Why don't you have a seat?" I nodded, settling into the chair across from him. Time to get down to business. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I'm a huge fan of The Demonfather. I've lost count of how many times I've rewatched it. Yes, Arthur's smile widened a fraction. "And you expressed interest in being part of the sequel, correct?" I nodded eagerly, leaning forward. "That's right. Ever since you mentioned a part 2, it's all I can think about. It's why I helped with your talent agency." I paused, then asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "So, when do you plan to start filming the sequel?" I let Anubis's question hang in the air, taking a moment to sip my tea. Truth be told, The Demonfather Part 2 was far from my immediate plans. I had my sights set on opening manga stores across the kingdom, maybe starting a record label. And my next film? That would be the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I couldn't tell Anubis that. Instead, I channeled my inner Michael Corleone, projecting that final boss aura. Yet I knew that act alone wouldn't be enough to keep a mob boss like Anubis on his toes. So I reached for my ace in the hole, heartstring. This skill, meant for directing actors, was about to serve a very different purpose. There were no cameras, no mics, no crew around us. Just two actors. No, that wasn't quite right. One actor and one director. Anubis was my unwitting performer, and I was the puppet master pulling his emotional strings. I'd used heartstring on him before, during our first meeting. The revelation that I could wield this power outside of film projects had caught me off guard then. Now, I felt more in control, less nervous about sharing space with a notorious mob boss, but the limits of heartstrings were still a mystery to me. Cockiness could be my downfall, so I treaded carefully, weighing each word like a jeweler examining precious stones. After a full minute of contemplation, I finally spoke. "Mr. Flameworth, let me ask you something." I paused, letting the tension build. "Would you prefer an unripe cherry, snatched too soon by an impatient farmer, or a perfectly ripe one, thoughtfully picked by a patient hand?" Confusion clouded Anubis's face. My penchant for odd metaphors was clearly throwing him for a loop. I suppose I'd choose the ripe cherry from the patient farmer," he replied, uncertainty lacing his words. A calm smile played on my lips. "So you'd rather wait patiently for something good than rush into something subpar?" Anubis nodded slowly, then furrowed his brow. "No offense, Mr. Morningstar, but what exactly does this have to do with the Demonfather sequel? I'm not seeing the connection." I took a deliberate sip of tea, savoring the moment. "It's quite simple, really. To create a truly great film, we must exercise patience. Rush the process, and we risk producing something less than satisfactory." Understanding dawned in Anubis's eyes. My message had finally hit home. "So, regarding the Demonfather sequel," I said, leaning forward slightly, "it's going to take time to plan everything out properly. Rush it, and we risk a subpar product." I paused, letting my words sink in. "I understand your eagerness, Mr. Flameworth, and I intend to honor our agreement. You'll have your role when the time comes. But the question is, will you be the impatient farmer, or the patient one?" Anubis fell silent, clearly mulling over my words. "If you insist on starting now, we can," I continued, my tone measured. "It's the least I can do to repay your help. But I can't guarantee it'll be the ripe cherry we both want it to be." After a long moment, Anubis let out a disappointed sigh. "I understand, Mr. Morningstar," he said, his voice heavy with reluctant acceptance. "I'll choose to wait. Wait for you to get everything just right." I smiled, genuine gratitude in my expression. "That's a wise decision, Mr. Flameworth," I said, inwardly relieved. "Give me time, and I promise, when I contact you about the Demonfather sequel, it'll be worth the wait." "I'll hold you to that," Anubis nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Morningstar. I hope I haven't taken up too much of it." "Not at all," I assured him, still smiling. I could feel the heartstrings effect lingering, a testament to my careful handling of the situation. Whether a careless response would have shattered the spell remained a mystery, but I was glad I hadn't had to find out. As Anubis and his men disappeared down the hallway, I slumped back in my chair, exhaling deeply. "Thank hell that's over," I muttered, glancing at my watch. Dealing with mob bosses was not how I'd planned to spend my morning, but before I could even think about relaxing, Lilith poked her head through the door. "Boss, there's someone here to see you." "It's the head of Demonic Talent Agency." I frowned, my mind racing. Demonic Talent Agency? Furful and Shuffle's old outfit? What could they want? Were they here to complain now that their former stars had skyrocketed to fame with Lord of the Rings? 5 days after its Morningstar Kingdom debut, Lord of the Rings hit Empirican screens. Bryan Brothers, under intense pressure from major studios, had only managed to secure 2,874 cinemas, a far cry from the 4,720 they'd hoped for. The key cinemas remained frustratingly out of reach. Bryan Brothers was itching to screen the film as widely as possible after seeing its ridiculous earnings in the Morningstar Kingdom alone. Empirican theaters dwarfed their Morningstar counterparts in size and service quality. But with Titan Pictures and other major studios pulling out all the stops to suppress the film, their hands were tied. Meanwhile, back in the Morningstar Kingdom, the heads of major demon studios had gathered for a private screening of Lord of the Rings. Much as they hated to admit it, they were impressed. But old habits die hard, and they couldn't resist picking apart what they'd seen. Ashen leaned back, a hint of admiration in his voice. "It's incredible. I don't know how the ex-prince pulled it off, but those orc actors. And the original soundtrack? Unforgettable. Not to mention his filming techniques. There's a lot to unpack there. Old Rusky, the monkey demon who owned Monk Entertainment, nodded along. But what really got me was that Balrog and the dragon. How in the nine hells did the exiled one manage that? Ricky Brawl, the bull demon behind Demonic Entertainment, let out a deep chuckle. Old Russ, you're behind the times. He pulled a newspaper from his coat. Take a gander at this. Russ adjusted his glasses, squinting at the headline, Exiled Prince's Ambitious Studio, Behind Lord of the Rings' Breathtaking Landscapes. As Russ read on, his eyes widened. The article detailed Arthur's Hellfire VFX Studio, equipped with illusion artifacts and other pricey magical gadgets to create lifelike backgrounds. VFX Studio? Russ muttered, confusion clear in his voice. What in blazes does that mean? Dizzy Flew, owner of District Films, jumped in. Read the whole thing, Russ. The ex-prince built himself a special effects studio. Calls it Hellfire VFX Studio. It can manipulate backgrounds through illusions. Word is, he sunk millions into the thing. Ashen nodded grimly. And let's not forget, just to keep that VFX studio running, the ex-prince is burning through thousands of dollars a day. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Old Russ broke the tension, his voice a mix of frustration and awe. I hate this Arthur. He's reshaping our industry right under our noses. After Lord of the Rings, people won't settle for just any pictures anymore. His words sparked a debate. Some nodded in agreement, while others scoffed, thinking Russ was giving the film too much credit. Ricky slammed his fist on the table. That's why we need our own VFX studio. But the cost? Dizzy hesitated, his voice trailing off. Look at the profits rolling in from Lord of the Rings. Ricky countered. We're talking millions here. Greed glinted in Ashen's eyes. Sure, it'll cost millions up front, but think of the potential returns. Old Russ cautiously interjected. It's not that simple. We can't just conjure up millions like Arthur did. Of course not, Ricky agreed. That's why we pool our resources. Each of us contributes to build a shared VFX studio. The promise of profits was tempting, but the idea of sharing both costs and rewards didn't sit well with everyone. They discussed the idea, but soon many of them began to disagree. Dizzy was the first to bail. I'm out. I don't like Demon Pictures and Demonic Entertainment having more control. Count me out too, mumbled Demon Spirit, breaking his usual silence. Same here, Old Russ chimed in. As the studio heads bickered, across town, another drama was unfolding. The agencies that had sold their stars to Hellfire Agency were now eating crow. Demonic Talent Agency and Devil Contracts, former homes to Furful, Shaffle, and Rupert Darkflame, were practically begging Arthur to sell the actors back, but Arthur stood firm, turning them away at every turn. All they could do was watch, filled with regret, as Lord of the Rings soared in popularity, catapulting their former stars to new heights of fame. Despite the drama swirling through the Morningstar Kingdom's entertainment industry, Lord of the Rings continued its meteoric rise. In Empirica, the film raked in a staggering $10 million on its opening day alone. The entertainment moguls could only grit their teeth, their eyes glinting with a mixture of greed and regret. But even as they coveted the film's success, they couldn't deny the seismic shift happening before them. The picture industry was entering a new era, and the architect of this change was none other than Arthur Morningstar, the exiled prince they'd all underestimated. The world was embracing this change as Lord of the Rings conquered box offices far beyond Morningstar and Empirica. In the Moonlight Kingdom, the film's first-day earnings hit a jaw-dropping $8.4 million, even under the intense pressure from Titan Pictures in the Evros continent. Major studios across kingdoms and countries, salivating over the film's profits, began a frenzied race to acquire distribution rights. Representatives flocked to Arthur, each trying to outbid the other. Some returned home triumphant, rights secured, while others left empty-handed, nursing wounded pride and emptier pockets. As days slipped by, Lord of the Rings made its debut in the Horn Kingdom. Demons lined up in droves, eager to experience the film that had set the world ablaze. In the capital of Horn Kingdom, the streets bustled with activity as people flocked to theaters, eager to catch the much-hyped film. Among the crowd, a couple made their way towards the cinema. Is this film you've been going on about really worth all the fuss? Lee Junfan asked his girlfriend, Linda, skepticism evident in his voice. Linda's eyes sparkled with excitement as she held up 2 tickets. Trust me, Lee. My uncle works for Righteous Film Studio, and you know he never talks about movies. But when he came back from seeing this one, he couldn't stop raving about it. He even gave us these tickets, see? Lee shoved his hands deeper into his pockets, still looking unconvinced. I don't know. I read in the papers that it's so bad it's funny. That's why it's doing well at the box office. Linda shook her head, exasperation creeping into her voice. Don't believe everything you read, Lee. It's obvious those stories are just hit pieces. People don't buy tickets for bad films, even if they're unintentionally funny. If you say so, Lee shrugged, his tone noncommittal. Linda pouted, nudging him playfully. I know you're only interested in martial arts films, but give this a chance. Trust me on this one, okay? All right, Lee conceded, with a small smile. We'll watch the film. As they joined the queue, Lee couldn't help but reflect on Linda's words. She was right, he had always been obsessed with martial arts films. Like many children growing up in Horn, Morningstar, or even Thorn, he'd been raised on a steady diet of high-flying kicks and dramatic fight scenes. It was no wonder he dreamed of becoming an actor and starring in his own martial arts epic, but as he looked around at the excited faces in line, Lee was reminded of the harsh reality. For most young adults, that dream was just that, a dream. Unlike Bobby Morningstar, who could throw money at vanity projects, the average person couldn't afford to finance their own martial arts blockbuster. Since Lord of the Rings took off, my family couldn't stop gushing about me. I'd often overhear my mother bragging to the neighbors, my son's a star now. Go watch Lord of the Rings, he's starring as Gollum. But the neighbors would always reply, Lord of the Rings? We haven't seen it yet. It's so expensive, $2 whole. Living in the outskirts of Furlan City, few could afford to go to the cinema, let alone watch Lord of the Rings. One day, my imp mother, Ishla, burst through our rickety door, frustration etched on her face. I can't believe it, Imcrag. It's been 2 weeks since your film hit the cinemas, and still no one in the neighborhood recognizes you. She slumped into a chair, pouring herself a cup of coffee with a huff. I couldn't help but chuckle. Mom, you have to understand. In this whole neighborhood, we're probably the only ones who've actually seen the film. He's right, darling, my dwarf father, Imker, chimed in from behind his newspaper. $2 is still a big deal around here. If it weren't for our precious Imcrag, we wouldn't be able to watch films, eat properly, or even buy a newspaper. He waved the paper for emphasis. Ishla pouted, then sighed. I suppose you're right. Her eyes softened as she looked at me. My little baby's a star now. He can buy us food. I couldn't help but smile at them. Just then, the door flew open again as my little sister, Ruru, burst in. Brother! There's a demon outside who wants to meet you. Says he knows you and has a job offer. I raised an eyebrow. A job? But I don't need, I trailed off, spotting a behemoth of a demon outside our tiny house. If he tried to enter, the place might crumble to pieces. Stepping outside, I recognized him immediately. Ringmaster Kelly. Kelly, the circus owner who'd kicked me out before, smiled warmly. Oh, here you are, dear Imcrag. What do you want from me, Ringmaster? I stammered, intimidated by his towering presence. My family hung back, probably terrified of being squashed. Kelly bent down, still looming over me. Oh, you look pretty silly now, dear. I'm here to offer you your job back at the circus. Don't you want it? I was stunned. What had caused this change of heart? Kelly wouldn't have set foot in our neighborhood before. I am sorry, Ringmaster. But I already have a job, I managed to say. Kelly's smile faltered. You're declining my kind offer? I gulped as he continued, look, I can even offer you $500 a month. Don't you want it? $500 was significant, but... I'm sorry, I said again. I have to decline. Kelly's face darkened. You're really rejecting my kind offer? After I was gracious enough to visit you here? I stayed silent, stepping back as my family trembled. Boys, Kelly growled, his facade of kindness evaporating, give this imp, or dwarf, or whatever he is, a lesson. A group of imps emerged from behind Kelly, their eyes gleaming with malice. I recognized them immediately as the circus thugs. I'm giving you one last chance, Imcrag, Kelly said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. He tossed a paper at my feet. There's the contract. Sign it now, or... He gestured to the imps, letting the threat hang in the air. I gritted my teeth, aware of the pressure Kelly was putting on me. The contract lay there, a few inches from my toes, like a venomous snake waiting to strike. Suddenly, a cold voice cut through the tension. "What do you think you demons are doing?" We all turned to see a young demon in an expensive suit striding towards us. "Boss Arthur!" I exclaimed, relief washing over me. Kelly fell silent, eyeing Arthur warily. "Are you bullying my talent here?" Arthur asked, his gaze fixed on Kelly, eyes cold as ice. Kelly puffed up his chest, trying to look brave. "So what if I am?" "You seem quite competent," Arthur said, his voice dangerously calm. "You think you can handle me?" Despite his size, Kelly flinched. But he quickly recovered, gesturing to his imp thugs. "I have my men here. You're alone. What can you do?" Arthur chuckled, the sound sending shivers down my spine. "You think you guys are enough?" Kelly looked smug, clearly underestimating my boss. But his expression quickly changed as Arthur summoned a swirling fireball above his palm. "Now," Arthur said, his voice casual as if discussing the weather, "you think you can take this fireball? Or maybe it's too small for a behemoth demon like yourself?" Our eyes bulged as Arthur increased the size of his fireball. Even Ringmaster Kelly took a step back. The imp thugs gulped, the pressure too much for them to handle. Kelly gritted his teeth, shooting me one last glare. "Humph, you may have become famous, but I don't need someone like you at the circus anyway." With that, he turned and stormed off, his thugs scurrying after him. I let out a sigh of relief as Kelly and his thugs disappeared from view. Turning to Boss Arthur, who had just extinguished his fireball, I noticed his eyes scanning our humble abode. "Imcrag," he said, his tone a mix of concern and amusement, "you've got quite a fragile home here." Following his gaze, my eyes widened. Our little house looked like it might collapse at any moment, the walls seemingly weakened just from the pressure of Arthur's magical display. My family huddled together in the corner, still shaken from the confrontation. "Boss," I stammered, curiosity overcoming my shock, "what brings you all the way out here?" Arthur's lips curved into a smile as he turned back to me. "Well, I was recently informed that you're living in these outskirts. After finding that out, I felt compelled to take action. I can't have my star talent living in a dangerous area, can I?" He paused, letting his words sink in. "So, I've taken the liberty of purchasing a house for you closer to the agency." Warmth spread through my chest at his words. "That's incredibly generous, boss. I was actually saving up to move out, but you really didn't need to go to such lengths." "Nonsense," Arthur waved off my protests, slipping his hands into his pockets with an air of nonchalance that somehow made him look even cooler. "Besides, that's not the only reason I'm here. You've received several project offers, Imcrag. I came to inform you personally and let you know it's up to you to choose which ones you want to take on. We're talking thousands of dollars here, maybe more. And I think I can negotiate even better pay for you." At the mention of jobs and thousands of dollars, I saw my family perk up, hope replacing the fear on their faces. "Really?" I asked, still processing the sudden turn of events. That's incredible, boss. I don't know what to say." Arthur's smile widened. "You don't need to say anything, Imcrag. Your performance in Lord of the Rings speaks for itself. Now, what do you say we discuss these offers over a cup of coffee? I hear your mother brews an excellent cup." At Arthur's mention of her coffee, my mother Ishla's face lit up with pride. "Oh, you're too kind, sir. I'd be delighted to brew you a cup of my finest blend." I felt a warmth spread through my chest at my boss's flattery. We were about to usher Arthur inside when a worrying creak from the walls reminded us of our home's fragile state. Arthur, ever the quick thinker, smoothly changed plans. "Why don't we continue this at Imcrag's new home? Lady Ishla, perhaps you could bring your famous coffee there?" My family's eyes widened with excitement, nodding eagerly at the suggestion. As we made our way to the house Arthur had bought, I fell into step beside him, my mind buzzing with questions about the new projects he'd mentioned. The walk felt both endless and too short, anticipation building with each step. Finally, we arrived. The house before us might have looked modest by some standards, but to my family and me, it was nothing short of a palace. We rushed inside, unable to contain our excitement, wide grins plastered across our faces. This is really ours?" I heard my father whisper in awe, running his hand along a smooth wall, and my little sister Ruru darted from room to room, squealing with delight. "Look! Real windows! And the floor doesn't creak." As I watched my family explore our new home, tears of joy pricking at my eyes, I turned to Arthur. Boss, I don't know how to thank you. Arthur just smiled, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. Your talent and hard work earned this, Imcrag. Now, how about that coffee? In that moment, surrounded by my overjoyed family in our new home, with the promise of a bright future ahead, I felt like the luckiest demon in all the realms. Who would have thought that playing a creepy, ring-obsessed creature would lead to all this? The performance of Lord of the Rings in just 1 week here in Empirica was nothing short of, well, to be honest, I'm at a loss for words. Speechless doesn't even begin to cover it. Every time the box office numbers came in, I felt like I was in a dream. The film had raked in $74 million in Empirica alone. Such figures were once thought impossible in our industry. Even the major Empirican or Elven studios wouldn't have dared to hope for such astronomical earnings, no matter how good their films were, and yet, here we are. A film making that kind of money, and not just any film. Not a human production, not an Elven masterpiece, but a Demon Studios creation. Or more specifically, the work of Arthur Morningstar, a young demon not even 18 years old, amassing generational wealth that other industry giants could only dream of. My musings were interrupted as Daniel, my brother, burst into the office unannounced. William, I've scheduled a meeting with Mr. Morningstar, back in the Morningstar Kingdom. I nodded, my face serious. Good. Make sure we have all the business proposals we've been working on ready. Daniel hesitated, his brow furrowing. I don't mean to be rude, William, but, do you really think this proposal will be profitable at all? I'm sure of it, I replied, a confident smile playing on my lips. Didn't you see how much we made from Lord of the Rings? Daniel shrugged. Yeah, we made a lot on the film, but our proposal for amusement parks is a different story. He added, we could lose a lot of money on this. I smiled again. I had been working on the amusement park proposal for days, but I knew it was more than just a park. Trust me. It's going to make us a fortune. After all, these parks are based on Lord of the Rings. Third-person POV, while the Bryan brothers were busy hatching their plans, little did they know that Arthur had already beaten them to the punch. The locations used to film Lord of the Rings in the Green Forest hadn't just been left to gather dust. For weeks, even as the film first hit screens, construction had been underway. The iconic tower from the movie wasn't just a set piece anymore, it was becoming a reality. Arthur had been funneling the box office earnings from Lord of the Rings straight into what he called the Hellfire Theme Parks project. Talk about striking while the iron was hot. So when the Bryan brothers finally sat down with Arthur at a posh restaurant in Furlan 2 days later, they were in for quite a shock. Amusement parks based on Lord of the Rings? Arthur mused, a hint of amusement in his voice. I don't mean to rain on your parade, gentlemen, but Hellfire Studios has been working on that for a while now. Our first park is already under construction in the Green Forest. William's jaw nearly hit the floor. You're telling us you had this idea before the film even blew up? Arthur's smile was enigmatic. You could say that. In fact, we're in the final stages of construction. The Bryan brothers exchanged skeptical glances. Surely, Arthur was bluffing, trying to steal their brilliant idea. Daniel, ever the pragmatist, decided to call Arthur's bluff. Would it be possible for us to take a look at this park, Mr. Morningstar? Of course, Arthur replied without missing a beat. We can head there now. It's just a few hours away by car. The brothers agreed, still convinced they were about to expose Arthur's lie. A few hours later, however, they found themselves standing slack-jawed in front of a meticulously constructed shire. The rolling hills, the round doors of hobbit holes, the party tree, it was all there, as if plucked straight from the film and made real. William turned to Arthur, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. This is incredible. How did you manage to keep this under wraps? Before Arthur could answer, a group of orcs came into view, strolling through the shire. The moment they spotted Arthur, they rushed towards him with an eagerness that caught the Bryan brothers off guard. Boss, one of the orcs called out, his gravelly voice tinged with excitement. We've been cooped up here for ages. When are we gonna hit the big time? You promised people would start seeing us as more than just savages, right? The Bryan brothers watched, slack-jawed, as Arthur addressed the orcs with a calm smile. Soon, my friends. Very soon. Before you know it, people will be flocking here to meet you. You'll be the stars of the show. As I watched the orcs' eager faces, a pang of guilt twisted in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was some kind of villain, trapping innocent creatures in an elaborate zoo. The truth was, From the very beginning, I'd had bigger plans for these orcs than just casting them in Lord of the Rings. They were always meant to be the mascots of the Hellfire theme park. Living, breathing mascots, except they were real. I hoped these orcs would be satisfied entertaining the theme park visitors, welcoming customers with warm smiles on their faces. I turned to the Bryan brothers, gesturing towards the gradually rising walls. What do you think? There's the entrance, and look, the Hellfire theme park sign is almost complete. The Bryan brothers stood there, speechless, and, was that disappointment I saw in their eyes? I could understand their reaction. After all, they'd come here with a proposal for something very similar. Hellfire theme park? Daniel finally spoke, his voice a mix of curiosity and surprise. So you call this a theme park? I nodded, aware that the term was novel in this world where amusement parks was still the go-to phrase. William seemed to gather his thoughts before speaking. Mr. Morningstar, we are willing to partner with you on this idea. Partner? I echoed, my amusement barely concealed. I was curious about what they thought they could bring to the table. William, sensing an opportunity, pressed on. We have extensive reach, Mr. Morningstar. We can market this theme park of yours, and... He paused, seemingly finding his footing. We can construct another theme park in Empirica. Bryan Brothers is willing to cover the cost, and you'll still be earning a substantial amount. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite myself. The idea of expanding into Empirica was tempting, I had to admit. But I wasn't about to show my hand just yet. An interesting proposition, gentlemen, I said, keeping my tone neutral. But tell me, what makes you think Hellfire Studios needs partners for this venture? We've managed quite well on our own so far. The challenge in my voice was clear, but so was the hint of interest. I wanted to see how they'd respond, what else they might offer. The Bryan brothers exchanged knowing glances before William spoke up, his tone carefully measured. You'll still need us, Mr. Morningstar. After all, from what we know, your studio has quite a few, shall we say, adversaries. Daniel nodded, eager to support his brother's point. Indeed. It'll be quite the challenge for you to break through the promotional barriers with so many media outlets gunning for you. I tapped my chin, feigning amusement. But deep down, I knew they had a point. The media landscape was a minefield, and having allies could make all the difference. You gentlemen make a fair argument, I conceded, my voice carefully neutral. But can the Bryan brothers truly handle those who oppose me? William and Daniel's faces lit up with confident smiles. Of course we can, William assured me. Daniel chimed in, we have our own media outlets and connections with several major ones in other countries and kingdoms. I made a show of considering their offer, watching as anxiety crept into their expressions. Little did they know, I was subtly employing my heartstrings skill, giving me an edge in these delicate negotiations. Let's discuss this further, I said finally, and I could practically feel their relief. After several days of intense negotiations, during which my heartstrings skill proved invaluable, I managed to secure a deal with the Bryan brothers that was more favorable than I'd initially hoped. Not to be left out, the Lava brothers also threw their hat into the ring, eager to be part of the theme park venture. Their involvement could prove particularly useful, given their ownership of media outlets like LB News and Lava Headlines, not to mention their connections to the Powerful Times, a major outlet in the Morningstar Kingdom. Though Powerful Times was based in the Horn Kingdom and ranked last among major newspaper publishers, it still wielded considerable influence. Having them on our side could be a pivotal advantage. As I signed the final documents, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The theme park was no longer just a dream, it was becoming a reality, and with these new partnerships, its potential seemed limitless. Of course, I knew better than to let my guard down completely. In this world of magic and media, alliances could shift as quickly as the wind. But for now, I allowed myself a small smile. The next phase of the Hellfire Empire was about to begin, third-person POV. About 5 weeks after Lord of the Rings first hit theaters, its box office had skyrocketed to a staggering $290 million globally and domestically combined. The hype for the film was at fever pitch. It had already surpassed the months-long box office run of The Demonfather, and Lord of the Rings was far from done, still going strong just 5 weeks into its screening. Around this time, Arthur's first theme park, the Hellfire theme park, finally completed construction. As soon as it was finished, newspapers like LB News, Powerful Times, and the Bryan brothers, the Angelic Times, began churning out stories about the Hellfire theme park. Though it wasn't yet open to the public, Arthur and his partners were determined to strike while the iron was hot, promoting the park aggressively. The news spread like wildfire among Lord of the Rings fans, eliciting a variety of reactions. At a bustling newsstand, a demon couple perused the latest headlines. Hellfire theme park? What in the nine hells is that supposed to mean? Rook, a fiend demon, scratched his horns in confusion. His girlfriend, Liza, rolled her eyes. Can't you read? She jabbed a finger at the newspaper. It says it's like an amusement park with Lord of the Rings fictional places. Rook's brow furrowed. Oh. So this shire actually exists in this Hellfire theme park? Liza nodded, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. Seems like it. Their conversation caught the attention of nearby demons, who quickly snatched up their own copies of the newspaper, eager to learn more about this amusement park. At news stands across the city, word of the Hellfire theme park spread like a contagious spell. A group of half-dwarves, half-humans were particularly enthused. Oh. I can't wait to see the shire for myself, one exclaimed, practically bouncing with excitement. As half-humans and half-dwarves, they felt a special connection to the shire and its inhabitants. In fact, thanks to Lord of the Rings, a new term for people of their heritage had begun to spread. Many who had watched the film started calling them hobbits, a phenomenon further propagated by the newspapers, solidifying this new racial designation. As for the elves who chanced upon the news in their kingdoms, their reactions mirrored those of the hobbits. An elven husband turned to his wife. Honey, let's book a flight to the Morningstar Kingdom. I want to see Rivendell with my own eyes. In Empirica, humans buzzed with curiosity about the Tower of Isengard. A wizard teacher, intrigued by his student's description of the Hellfire theme park, mused aloud, I wonder if Saruman still resides in the tower. Wouldn't mind having a chat with him myself. The anticipation wasn't limited to the Morningstar Kingdom. People worldwide eagerly awaited the grand opening of the Hellfire theme park. With the opening date public knowledge, Grass City saw an unprecedented influx of tourists, leaving Lord Antry speechless. At first, Antry was merely curious about the surge in visitors. It wasn't until his assistant, Rim, an imp demon, enlightened him that the reality sank in. City Lord, Rim explained, a hint of excitement in his voice, it seems they're all here for the opening of the Hellfire theme park. Hellfire theme park? Antry's brow furrowed in confusion. Rim pressed on, my lord, do you recall when ex-Prince Arthur purchased that significant plot in Green Forest? I remember, Antry nodded, recalling how most of the money had gone to the royal family and government. At the time, he'd thought Arthur a fool for spending so much on seemingly useless land. Well. Rim hesitated, then continued, it appears the ex-prince had plans to profit from it. The Hellfire theme park is built on that very land. People are flocking here for its grand opening. Antry's eyes widened as the implication sank in. You mean to tell me, the ex-prince is about to make a fortune from these visitors? They're not here for Grass City itself? I'm afraid not, my lord, Rim confirmed. And that tavern Arthur bought and rebranded as the Prancing Pony? It's packed to the rafters. Antry's expression turned solemn as he processed this information. As March 31st, 1272 dawned, anticipation crackled in the air. The Hellfire theme park stood poised to open its gates in the lush expanse of Green Forest. Arthur, cutting a striking figure before the entrance, found himself surrounded by a sea of eager faces held at bay by vigilant security. Excited voices pierced the air. Aragorn. Please, kiss me like Arwen. Aragorn. The cries of adoration washed over Arthur, but he remained focused on the task at hand. With a flourish, he raised an oversized pair of scissors. The crowd held its collective breath as he sliced through the ribbon, officially christening the park. A thunderous cheer erupted, marking the momentous occasion. Arthur's voice rang out over the din, amplified by the microphone. The first Hellfire theme park is now open. His eyes swept over the throng of people, a smile playing at his lips. And as our inaugural guests, everyone here gets to enter for free. The announcement was met with jubilant cries. Yeah. It was worth the wait. Amidst the celebrating masses, Lord Antry observed the scene, his expression tinged with regret. The scale of the event and the fervor of the crowd far exceeded his expectations. If only he had foreseen this, he lamented silently, he could have demanded a far higher price for the land. I watched in awe as humans, dwarves, and demons swarmed into the Hellfire theme park. There must have been hundreds of them, but the place was big enough to swallow them all up. I could have made a fortune off these folks, at least a few $1,000. But I decided to let em in for free. The newspaper ads were good and all, but I knew word of mouth was where the real magic happened. If these people had a blast at the Hellfire theme park, they'd tell everyone they knew. That kind of organic marketing? You can't put a price on it. For the Shire, I got clever. Hired a bunch of half-human, half-dwarf actors to play hobbits. Funny thing is, after Lord of the Rings blew up, people started calling all half-human, half-dwarfs hobbits in real life. Over in Mini Isengard, we had orcs running around playing Saruman's army. The Orthanc Tower wasn't as tall as in the film, but you could actually go inside and climb to the top. Up there, I had a human actor playing Saruman, the guy who played Saruman in the movie. Way out of my budget now. In another corner, we had Mini Rivendell. Elven actors cost an arm and a leg, so I only managed to snag a few to hang around there. The Hellfire theme park somehow managed to cram all these iconic Lord of the Rings places into one spot. It wasn't easy making everything fit, but we pulled it off by dividing the park into different sections. We didn't build every little detail, just enough to sell the illusion. A bit of Rivendell here, a slice of Isengard there. It might have been smaller than in the movie, but it looked real enough to make you feel like you'd stepped right into Middle-Earth. As visitors entered the Hellfire theme park, most had tempered expectations. After all, the newspapers had made it clear that the breathtaking scenes from Lord of the Rings were just illusions crafted in the so-called Hellfire VFX studio. But as they stepped inside, their eyes widened in surprise. Walking into the Shire, they found themselves surrounded by hobbits going about their daily business. The iconic elements of Hobbiton were all there, from the cozy hobbit holes with their round doors to the party tree standing tall in the center of the village. While it may not have been as perfect as the film version, the replica was real enough to make visitors feel like they'd stepped onto the set of Lord of the Rings. It wasn't just the physical scenery that sold the illusion, but the atmosphere as well. The hobbit actors seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the throng of visitors invading their peaceful hamlet. This discomfort, however, only added to the authenticity of the experience. Visitors felt like they were truly intruding on the daily lives of these shy, home-loving creatures. This was all part of Arthur's grand design. He had instructed the actors to behave as real hobbits would when faced with an unexpected influx of outsiders. "Can I have a picture with you, Mr. Hobbit?" a young demon child asked, tugging at her parents' hands. The hobbit actor furrowed his brow, looking conflicted. Kid, I'm quite busy, perhaps dash please?" the little demon monkey pleaded, her eyes wide and hopeful. The hobbit sighed dramatically. "Oh, all right then." His apparent helplessness in the face of the child's request drew laughter from the onlooking crowd. Encouraged by this success, another child piped up, "Me too, Mr. Hobbit." The actor's face contorted into an exaggerated expression of dilemma, eliciting more chuckles from the gathered visitors. As word spread of the hobbit's amusing reactions, more and more people clamored for pictures, creating a comical scene that perfectly captured the essence of the shy, somewhat bewildered hobbits encountering the outside world. Meanwhile, in the Mini Isengard section, the orcs playing Saruman's army were really getting into their roles. The crowd eyed them with obvious disdain or fear, which didn't go unnoticed by the actors. "Why re they lookin' at us like that?" one orc grumbled to his buddy. "Didn't Boss Arthur say we'd be welcomed with open arms after the film?" His friend shook his head. "Nah, you've got it all wrong. Look over there." He pointed towards their orc chief. They turned to see their leader surrounded by excited visitors, all clamoring for pictures and autographs. "See? People are warming up to us," the second orc said, a hint of pride in his voice. Before the orcs could dwell on why they were being avoided, visitors began approaching them for pictures too. Gradually, they realized it wasn't that people disliked them, they just didn't approve of orcs siding with Saruman or Sauron from Lord of the Rings. An elf even offered some unsolicited advice: "Choose the right side, orc. Evil doesn't always win, you know. Look at the demons now, they used to be considered evil, but these days they can't hold a candle to other races." The orcs found themselves on the receiving end of impromptu lectures, especially from the elves, leaving them more than a little confused. "Where's Saruman?" a human demanded, interrupting an orc mid-photo with a dwarf. "I want to challenge him to a magic duel." The orcs exchanged bewildered glances, unsure whether to stay in character or break the fourth wall to explain the situation. This wasn't quite the warm welcome they'd been expecting. At the top of Orthanc Tower, the human actor playing Saruman stood before a mysterious orb, mic hidden nearby. He intoned gibberish meant to sound like spells, adding to the mystical atmosphere. Beneath the orb, concealed from view, a projector displayed scenes from Lord of the Rings, specifically, Gandalf and company battling a snowstorm while crossing the misty mountains. This sight riled up the visitors, especially a young but burly, bearded dwarf who foolishly believed Saruman was actually attacking Gandalf. "You will not succeed, Saruman," the dwarf bellowed. "What are you do?" The actor couldn't finish his sentence before a fist connected with his face. Gah. The crowd's reaction was mixed, some chuckled, others cheered the dwarf on, many feeling a sense of vicarious revenge for Gandalf. More level-headed visitors rushed to restrain the dwarf and help the actor to his feet. You despicable dwarf," the actor sputtered, pointing accusingly. "You deserve it," the young dwarf shot back. "Attacking Frodo, Gandalf, Aragorn, and Gimli with your snowstorm spell." The commotion drew the attention of the demon managing the mini-Isengard section, who quickly explained to the young dwarf that everything was just for show. Red-faced, the dwarf mumbled an embarrassed apology to the actor. Similar incidents popped up throughout the Hellfire theme park. While the opening was rocky by some standards, it was undeniably a huge success. Many visitors felt as if they'd stepped right into the world of Lord of the Rings. Arthur POV, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the Hellfire theme park shut its gates for the night, I found myself buried in a mountain of reports. My financial guy was practically salivating as he rattled off the potential profits we could have raked in if we hadn't gone with the free admission. I couldn't deny it was a pretty penny, but sometimes you've got to spend money to make money, right? What really caught my attention, though, were the incident reports. Seems our actors had a rougher day than expected. A bunch of orcs came to me, grumbling about getting punched or nearly barbecued by overzealous visitors throwing fireballs. "Boss," one of them said, nursing a bruised arm, "I thought you said we'd be welcomed with open arms after the film." I winced, feeling a pang of guilt. I know. Look, I'll make it right. How about a bonus for your trouble? And don't worry about the medical bills, I've got you covered." Their eyes lit up at that, and I couldn't help but feel they'd earned it, putting up with that mess. And the one who complained the most, his pride obviously bruised, was the human actor playing Saruman. He stormed into my office, sporting a nasty black eye. His face was a mess of bruises, and his usually pristine white hair looked like it had been through a windstorm. "This is outrageous," he fumed, gesturing wildly. "I was assaulted. By a dwarf, no less. Do you have any idea? Whoa, I held up my hands, trying not to let my amusement show. "Slow down. Start from the beginning." As he ranted, I couldn't help but feel a mix of genuine pity and, well, amusement. I mean, who'd have thought people would be dumb enough to mistake this guy for the actual Saruman? Sure, he had the fake beard and dyed white hair, but he looked nothing like the actor from my film. "Look," I said when he finally paused for breath, "I get it. This isn't what you signed up for. How about we sweeten the deal a bit? A fat bonus, full medical coverage, and a little something extra for your trouble. What do you say?" He eyed me suspiciously for a moment before his shoulders slumped. "Fine," he muttered, some of the fight going out of him. "But if this happens again, it won't," I assured him, hoping I wasn't making a promise I couldn't keep. As he left, looking somewhat mollified, I couldn't help but shake my head. What a day. But you know what? Despite the chaos, the punches thrown, and the singed eyebrows, I couldn't deny it, we'd pulled it off. The Hellfire theme park was officially open for business, and if today was any indication, we were in for one hell of a ride. A few days have passed since the Hellfire theme park opened its gates, and the profits are rolling in faster than I can count. Tens of thousands of dollars, just like that. The park's popularity in the Morningstar Kingdom has skyrocketed beyond my wildest dreams. Tourists are flocking to Grass City, drawn by the allure of our Middle-earth attractions. The elves, in particular, can't get enough of our mini Rivendell. Words even reached their media outlets, with headlines screaming about how Rivendell exists in real life. Talk about free advertising, we've got elves pouring in by the boatload. Of course, I had to make some adjustments after that chaotic opening day. Hired a bunch of behemoth demons as security to keep our actors safe from overenthusiastic visitors. Yeah, we had to plaster the place with signs saying fake scene, fake spell, and fake blood. Might take away from the immersion a bit, but it's better than having another Saruman incident. Keeps the gullible ones from getting too carried away. The success of Lord of the Rings has earned me an impressive 24.75 million entertainment points. That's way more than the Demonfather ever brought in, which just goes to show how much more popular and impressive Lord of the Rings has been. The box office numbers back this up. We hit $330 million yesterday. The entertainment systems data breaks it down like this: about 44 million tickets sold in the Morningstar Kingdom at $2 a pop. Another 22.5 million tickets went to other countries and kingdoms at the same price. In the Western countries and kingdoms, where tickets go for $3, we've sold about 66.67 million. According to the Entertainment System Film Statistics data, a total of 132.17 million people have bought tickets and watched the film. For each viewer, I earn 0.1 points if they're casual fans, 0.2 if they love and adore the film, and a sweet 0.3 points for those who are completely obsessed. With numbers like these, it's no wonder the points are piling up so fast. My total entertainment points from Lord of the Rings, The Demonfather, and Hellfire theme park have hit a whopping 34.40 million. With this kind of points, I could finally snag some of those impressive skills from the magical shop. That'd give my directing a serious boost. One skill that caught my eye was atmosphere control, priced at 10 million entertainment points. Atmosphere control allowed the user to control the area's atmosphere, adjusting lighting, temperature, and background ambience. Require mana per use, 20, it can be leveled up with use. At first glance, it might not seem like much, but the potential is insane. As a director, I could use this to elevate every scene in my films, who knows? If I level it up enough, I might even control the atmosphere of an entire city. Imagine adjusting the temperature, making city folk dance to my tune, turning them into actors under my directorial strings. Whoa. Getting a bit carried away there. It's an ambitious dream, sure, but why not? I went ahead and bought the atmosphere control. Then there was this other skill in the skill shop, called Cinematic Vision, worth 5 million entertainment points. Cinematic Vision. As a director, you can visualize how scenes will appear in the final cut, complete with editing, special effects, and sound design. This foresight allows you to make on-the-spot adjustments to enhance the scene. I bought that one too. The moment I did, I was hit with a wave of flashbacks from filming The Demonfather and Lord of the Rings. After the mental replay, I couldn't help but shake my head. I didn't think I could film it like that, I sighed, feeling a twinge of regret. But what's done is done. I'm now down 15 million points. After purchasing a skill that cost me 15 million entertainment points, the system unlocked higher level skills that I can now buy. Scrolling through the list, my eyes nearly popped out of my head. There was Time Rewind, and yeah, it does exactly what you'd think, for a cool 100 million points. Then there's Voice of Command, a skill that can order someone against their will, for 30 million points. The more I scrolled, the more impressed I got. I need to gain more points, I muttered, shifting my focus to completing my first computer. Probably this world's first decent computer. At that, Lucy Morningstar POV, I've got to hand it to that younger brother of mine, Arthur, he's been unexpectedly helpful. The tax revenue from his film alone is significant, giving a real boost to the kingdom's development. Not to mention, it's done wonders for funding my own luxurious lifestyle. Those super rare potions I've been eyeing? Finally within reach, and they've helped increase my magical abilities more than ever before, but I didn't just sit on that money. The moment I saw the first day's box office results for Lord of the Rings, I knew we were in for another tourism boom, just like with The Demonfather. So I made a calculated decision to invest heavily in our entertainment venues, the amusement parks, circuses, the whole lot. Even though I haven't seen the film myself yet, I know it was shot right here in the kingdom. That's why I poured about 70% of the film tax earnings, not just from Lord of the Rings, mind you, into these entertainment investments, and wouldn't you know it? My instincts were spot on. In just the first few weeks, our kingdom's entertainment venues are already profiting from the surge in tourism. Looking at the latest financial reports, I estimate I'll recoup my entire investment in these parks and circuses within the next 2 weeks. Lord Vermillion burst into my office, his habit of barging in without knocking making me frown. What is it this time? The economic advisor cleared his throat before speaking. Your Highness, we have a bit of a problem. My frown deepened. Out with it. Lord Vermillion coughed nervously. Red Berry, the overseer of our entertainment venues, is here to discuss some concerns. Send him in, I said curtly. Red Berry, the scale demon who managed our entertainment industry, slunk in with fear written all over his face. What's the issue, Berry? Red hesitated before blurting out, Your Highness, I'll be blunt. Our earnings from the entertainment venues are declining. I waved dismissively. That's to be expected. The hype from that Lord of the Rings film is dying down, so naturally, tourism is tapering off. It's not that simple, Your Highness, Red shook his head. We've got competition. Competition? I raised an eyebrow. Lord Vermilion chimed in, he's referring to the exiled prince's new Hellfire theme park. It's similar to our venues but on a grander scale, capable of hosting thousands of visitors simultaneously. Red nodded vigorously. Exactly. People are flocking there instead of our attractions. The ex-prince's film hype isn't fading, it's intensifying. And if this trend continues, Lord Vermilion added gravely, it'll be challenging for your highness to recoup your investments in the entertainment industry within the expected timeframe. As I listened, I felt anger building inside me. I'd thought everything was going according to plan. Who would have guessed that damn Arthur would throw a wrench in my grand investment scheme? In the research room, my team and I huddled around our first completed prototype. The keyboard looked rough, a product of our simple manufacturing process, but it was functional. That's what mattered. As for the monitor, we had a stroke of luck. Television had been invented in Empirica 2 years ago. It wasn't exactly popular yet, with only a handful of TV programs available, but it meant we didn't have to reinvent the wheel when it came to computer displays. The technology was there, we just had to adapt it. Alright, I said to my nervous computer team, let's insert the magic core. Drake and Josh exchanged anxious glances. I gave them an encouraging nod, and they finally slotted the magic core into what would have been the PSU socket in my previous life. In this world, magic cores were our power source, though I was already planning more efficient alternatives for the future. Not everyone could afford fresh energy like magic cores. After all, it's worth noting that electricity in this world was a mixed bag of magic cores, coal, and oil. The fact that magic cores made up only a tiny percentage of the power grid just showed how expensive they were. We held our breath for a few seconds. Then, the computer monitor flickered to life. Green lines of light flowed across the motherboard, emanating from the magic core. It was working exactly as we'd intended. The screen only displayed a basic prompt, but you'd think we'd won the lottery from the team's reaction. Hell yeah, it worked. Some of them looked ready to burst into tears of joy. I couldn't blame them. They'd been working around the clock to build this thing. Of course, we still had a long way to go. The machine didn't have an operating system yet, and programming something on the level of Windows or Linux would take time. It would have been a monumental task if I was the only one who understood the hardware components and low-level programming. Thankfully, since the team had built the computer alongside me, they grasped the basics too. I hated to be a buzzkill, but I had to remind them, I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade, but our prototype isn't complete without the basic operating system we've been planning. Their brief celebration wound down, but pride still shone in their eyes. Drake and Josh, who had been scribbling low-level language on papers, looked up with determination. Drake spoke with confidence, we've pretty much memorized the coding, Your Highness. Given some time, we'll be able to develop a basic operating system. I could see why he was so sure of himself. After all, the basic operating system we had in mind was relatively simple. It would include fundamental functions like file management and a command line interface, but what set it apart was its integration with magical elements, a spell library that could tap into the power of the magic cores. This library would include various spells, with a focus on illusion magic, all drawing power from the magic cores. I had to admire their enthusiasm, but I wondered if they'd maintain that confidence when it came to programming an operating system on par with Windows or Linux. That was a whole different level. Still, the basic system we are about to develop was no walk in the park. We would be able to cast spells from the OS spell library, a feature I was particularly excited about. My plan was to load the computer's memory with illusion spells. If we could link this computer to the VFX studio, we could make our illusions there even more efficient and impressive. Now that our first prototype computer was in the bag, I'd already briefed George about signing up for the Electronics Expo in Empirica. The dwarf had been busy tinkering with our cameras when he heard the news about the prototype. He looked up, surprise etched on his face. Done already? Thought it'd take longer. I couldn't help but chuckle. Seems Drake and Josh have a knack for leading a team. They might have even surpassed you in talent. I doubt that, George scoffed good-naturedly. He held up a camera, pride gleaming in his eyes. Look here. I've souped up our camera. Better resolution, improved colors, and you can even control the frame rate now. He puffed out his chest a bit. I ain't been twiddling my thumbs, you know. Been plenty busy myself. Very impressive, I nodded, stroking my chin thoughtfully. But before I could continue, a familiar voice cut through the air. Just yesterday, I'd bought out her contract from her agency. It wasn't cheap, $70,000, to be exact. Vivian, however, didn't seem to share my good mood. Don't smile like nothing happened, she snapped, jabbing an accusatory finger at me. Confused, I glanced at Furful for help, but she just shrugged. What did I do? I asked, genuinely perplexed. Why? Vivian paused, gathering steam. Why didn't you contact me for Lord of the Rings? I could have been Arwen, you know. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. But you're not an elf. You could have made me Galadriel. Vivian insisted, stubborn as a mule. She looked like a kid who'd been denied her favorite toy. I couldn't help but chuckle. Don't worry, I'll be sure to feature you in my next film. It's a cowboy film. Want in? I offered, still amused. Vivian lifted her chin proudly. Why not? I could play a beautiful cowgirl. I looked at Vivian in amusement. She acted like we hadn't seen each other in ages, still so familiar around me. Then it hit me, maybe a few months really was just a blink of an eye for people with the long lifespans of this world. George, sensing the tension, cleared his throat. Right, I'd better head to Empirica to sign us up for the Electronics Expo. I'll book a flight now. With that, he excused himself and left. Electronics Expo? Furful's ears perked up. She turned to me, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. What's that about? Vivian leaned in, equally intrigued. Yeah, spill the beans, Arthur. I ran a hand through my hair, considering how much to reveal. Well, we've just wrapped up an electronic project. Got the prototype ready and everything. We're aiming to showcase it at the expo in June. Ooh, can we see it? Vivian asked, practically bouncing on her toes. Furful nodded eagerly. I'd love a peek too. Must be something special if you're taking it to the expo. That place is where all the cutting-edge stuff gets unveiled. I hesitated, then smiled slyly. Want to see it? There's just one tiny catch, you'll need to sign an NDA first. It's not about trust, I backpedaled, seeing their expressions turn frosty. I'm just being cautious. But, oh, alright. One quick look won't hurt. Is that a TV? Vivian squinted at the monitor. And that thing, some kind of fancy typewriter? Weird combo, if you ask me. Weeks had passed since die-hard Lord of the Rings fans began scouring every nook and cranny of the Morningstar Kingdom, desperate to unearth powerful magical rings like those in the film. But this wasn't just a local phenomenon. The Lord of the Rings craze, as media outlets had dubbed it, had spread like wildfire across the globe. From the Moonlight Kingdom to Wales, from Deutschland to the Leaf Kingdom in the Evros continent, it had taken root. Even countries like Kannada, Aztec, and Empirica in the Empirica continent weren't immune. The fervor reached as far as the southeast Anatolia and East Watch kingdoms, and even touched parts of the vast Eden continent. People worldwide had thrown themselves into the search with reckless abandon. Adventurers, in particular, had taken it to extreme levels. Some brave souls set sail for distant islands, their logic simple yet compelling. When questioned by curious journalists, these seafaring treasure hunters all gave variations of the same answer. Remember the end of the film? Frodo was on a boat, heading to some island to hide the ring from Sauron's forces. It only makes sense to check the islands. It was a reasonable assumption, but it came with unforeseen consequences. Reports flooded in of these adventurers clashing with pirates, who, as it turned out, were after the same prize. Not all seekers were drawn to the seas, though. Some adventurers and mercenaries turned their attention to towering mountain peaks and deep, dark caves. These individuals didn't just rely on Lord of the Rings for inspiration, they pored over ancient tomes, following cryptic clues in their quest. As the search intensified, ordinary folks found themselves pushed to the sidelines. Even dangerous mobs had joined the fray, adding an extra layer of peril to the already risky venture. The world had gone ring mad, and there seemed to be no end in sight to this Lord of the Rings craze. In the Eden continent, the Lunar Kingdom stood as the pinnacle of elven civilization. Its high castle, though dwarfed by the towering Eden tree that pierced the sky, served as the capital for the elven race. This kingdom held sway over almost all other elven realms, which followed its directives. Citizens of the Lunar Kingdom enjoyed special privileges when traveling to other elven territories or even some human and dwarf cities. Within the castle's grand throne room, a serious atmosphere prevailed. On the throne sat a beautiful elf queen, her body adorned with intricate leaf designs and her head crowned with an elegant leaf circlet. Before her knelt several elves in robes, their faces concealed by animal-themed masks. The elf wearing a gorilla mask spoke, his voice low and urgent. My queen, our latest intelligence from Dolphin suggests that pirates have spotted magical rings. Dolphin and the others lost track of them, but we assure you, we will retrieve these artifacts. Despite her ethereal beauty, the queen's expression remained grave. We must secure these rings before they fall into the wrong hands. The Solaris faith cannot be allowed to claim them. Her voice hardened. We've been on the back foot against the Solaris for too long. As servants of the moon goddess, it's our duty to bring her glory and honor. The masked elves bowed their heads in unison. We will not disappoint you, my queen, the gorilla-masked elf vowed. Unbeknownst to Arthur, the rings had caught the attention of powerful and influential figures across the globe. While adventurers, pirates, and treasure hunters scoured the lands, they remained oblivious to the involvement of religious organizations, royals, and governments in the search. In the Evros continent, within the Apollo kingdom, the heart of the Solaris faith, stood the most influential and popular church. The Holy Land bustled with worshippers from all walks of life, coming to pay homage to their lord. However, beneath this pious facade, a clandestine meeting of high-ranking church officials was taking place in a concealed room. Where's the Pope? His presence is crucial for a meeting of this gravity, a cardinal said, his tone serious. Another cardinal replied, the Pope's been missing for quite some time. Last I heard, he was seen in the Thorn Kingdom. What? My sources place him in Chosun, in East Watch, a third interjected. You're both mistaken. Word has it he's in Japan, crossing swords with samurai, yet another added. As the cardinals and archbishops continued to debate the Pope's whereabouts, one cardinal, clearly wielding more authority, spoke coldly, the Pope's location is irrelevant. He's been absent for years, neglecting his duties. If the angels of Solaris didn't insist on keeping him, I'd have replaced him long ago. His words silenced the room. You're right, Senior Virtue, one cardinal conceded. Another muttered, I too question why the angels want him to retain the position. Murmurs of agreement filled the room until Virtue raised his hand. Enough, he said firmly, waiting for silence before continuing, we must focus on the matter at hand. His expression grew grave as he spoke, our priority now is to secure these ancient rings. We cannot allow other faiths to impede us. These artifacts are crucial to our goal of ruling all races. Murmurs filled the room before one cardinal spoke up, we've been searching for these ancient rings for years. Now this Lord of the Rings has alerted other faiths to their existence. It was supposed to be our secret. Indeed, another nodded grimly. Now we face more competition. The dwarves of the Forge Father's faith, the elves of the Moon Goddess faith, and those faithless demons. This is all Arthur Morningstar's fault. Virtue's frown deepened. Enough, he barked, silencing the room. After a pause, he continued more calmly, these ancient rings would have drawn attention eventually. There's no point in assigning blame. Despite his words, Virtue couldn't help but internally curse Arthur Morningstar. We must find a way to secure the ancient rings, Virtue concluded. Otherwise, our grand plan will crumble. He let his words sink in before adding, that's all for now. This meeting is adjourned. As the Solaris faith plotted, similar gatherings were taking place across the world. The Moon Goddess faith, the dwarves who worshipped the blacksmith god, all held their own clandestine meetings. Even in Empirica, the youth government was not idle. Find those rings, the president ordered his top intelligence operatives. This is a matter of national security and peace. Just as these powers set their plans in motion, shocking news broke. One of the magical rings had been found in the Morningstar Kingdom and was to be auctioned. Though the ring's authenticity remained unconfirmed, it caught the attention of powerful figures worldwide. Even Arthur, despite being knee-deep in preparations for his next film, couldn't resist the allure of the supposedly discovered magical ring. His curiosity got the better of him as he turned to George. Hey George, fancy attending an auction? I'm itching to see this magical ring they've found. George looked up from his work, eyebrow raised. Magical ring? Sounds like a load of nonsense to me. Probably just some hoax to drum up attention. Arthur shrugged off George's skepticism. While he too harbored doubts about the ring's authenticity, he couldn't shake the thought that in this world a fantasy compared to his previous life, a magical ring wasn't entirely out of the realm of possibility. Come on, Arthur persisted, even if the ring's a dud, there might be some ancient dwarven craftsmanship or mechanical marvels up for grabs. Could be useful for our projects. At the mention of ancient dwarven artifacts, George's eyes lit up. Well, when you put it that way. Alright, count me in. Might find something interesting after all. With that, Arthur's mind was made up. He'd attend the auction, blissfully unaware that the magical ring had caught the attention of far more powerful figures. The so-called magical ring, supposedly identical to those in my Lord of the Rings film, was set to be auctioned at the one-night auction. Though I seriously doubted it matched the rings from Lord of the Rings, I still felt it was worth checking out. After all, it might indeed be a magical ring, even if it couldn't compare to the ones in Lord of the Rings. The auction was slated to begin in 2 days. Furfel seemed to have gotten wind of it too, as she came to my office asking, "Arthur, did you hear about the auction?" "Yeah, I've heard about it," I nodded. "They're saying the ring's the same as in my film, but I doubt it." Furfel raised an eyebrow. "How so?" She paused before adding, "Didn't you base the film on real history?" I nodded with a wry smile. I couldn't exactly tell her it was based on a film from my previous life, so I just said, "Well, yeah, but I took some creative liberties with the ring's powers and capabilities. Truth is, no rings as powerful as those in Lord of the Rings actually exist." Furfel nodded, seemingly satisfied with my explanation. "I'm thinking of attending the auction with Schaffel. Want to join us?" "Funny you should ask," I replied, a bit surprised. I was planning to go with George. The rings piqued my curiosity. "Really? Why don't we all go together then?" Furfel suggested. I shrugged, seeing no reason to refuse. "Why not? But tell me, what's drawing you to the auction? Is it the ring?" Furfel shook her head. "Not really. While I'm curious about the ring, I'm actually after the ancient amulet. It's an amulet said to have belonged to the third queen of the Rose's kingdom," Furfel explained, a hint of reverence in her voice. "Ah, the Rose's kingdom," I nodded, recalling Furfel's origins. "So it's a treasure from your homeland?" Furfel nodded, her eyes distant, perhaps lost in memories of her kingdom. The day of the one-night auction finally arrived. The auction house stood proudly in the upper district of Furlan City, one of the wealthiest areas in town. This district was a bustling hub of commerce and luxury. Upscale restaurants and trendy cafes lined the streets, alongside high-end bookstores and fashion boutiques. Jewelry stores glittered with precious gems, their windows drawing admiring glances from passers-by. It was also home to some of the most prestigious schools and universities in the city. Today, however, all eyes were on the one-night auction house, or more specifically, on the rings from Lord of the Rings that were to be sold there. High-end cars, each worth tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, began pulling up to the auction house. The who's who of demon society stepped out, ready to vie for the prized items. Ashen Gray, head of Demon Pictures, strode confidently into the building. Close behind came Ricky Brawl of Demonic Entertainment, followed by Russ Key from Monk Entertainment. Dizzy Flew of District Films and Demon Spirit of Spirit Studios weren't far behind. It seemed the entire upper echelon of the demon entertainment industry had turned out for the event. Even rich demon kids, clearly having skipped their classes, were milling about outside the auction house. "Looks like my allowance is about to take a serious hit," one of them chuckled. His friend grinned back. "I'm saving mine for that magical ring. Can you imagine?" As they chatted, the group's attention suddenly shifted. They turned to a young demoness standing nearby, her regal bearing unmistakable. "Apollonia," one of them called out, curiosity evident in his voice, "what about you? Got your eye on anything special in this auction?" The young princess regarded them coolly, clearly considering her response. The 14-year-old Apollonia began to respond, "I'll probably just take a look at that magical ring," but she was cut off by a familiar voice. "Apollonia, what are you doing here?" The group turned to see Lucy Morningstar approaching. "Your Highness," they chorused, bowing deeply. Only Apollonia remained upright. Lucy fixed her gaze on her young relative. "Shouldn't you be in class?" Apollonia met her stare evenly. "I'm just hanging out with my friends," she said, then added pointedly, "What about you? Aren't you busy?" Lucy faltered for a moment before regaining her composure. "I'm here for important matters, of course." The truth, which she kept to herself, was that she too had come for the magical ring. As they spoke, more high-profile figures arrived at the auction house. Among them were secretive individuals in robes, some clearly cult members, others from the Solaris, Moon Goddess, and Blacksmith God's faiths. Intelligence operatives from the use mingled with the crowd, as did agents from other countries and kingdoms, all trying to blend in. Just as the auction was about to begin, a sleek Fire of Hell car, worth a cool $10,000, pulled up. Arthur stepped out, followed by George, Furfel, and Schaffel. George let out a low whistle as he surveyed the lineup of cars. "Would you look at that?" Most of these are Fire of Hell brand. Furful nodded, a knowing smile on her face. It's all thanks to the Demonfather. That film saved the Fire of Hell company from bankruptcy. Arthur chuckled, recalling how the struggling car company had been revived simply because their vehicles featured so prominently in his film. They'd only given him a $10,000 car as a thank you, but he hadn't minded much. "Let's go," Arthur said, leading his group into the auction house. As they entered, he couldn't help but wonder what surprises awaited them inside. The magical ring might be the main attraction, but with this crowd, anything could happen. The auction officially began as a stunning succubus took the stage as host. "Welcome to the one-night auction, everyone," she purred while the high-profile and secretive individuals remained stoic. Many of the regular demon attendees couldn't help but eye the alluring host appreciatively. "I'm Jenny Lee, and I'll be presenting the items up for auction today," she announced, launching into the first item, a decaying dragon tooth starting at $100. I and their VIP room, Arthur, Furful, George, and Shuffle settled in for a long wait. As the auction dragged on, Arthur found himself stifling yawns. Finally, the moment they'd been waiting for arrived. Jenny presented the ancient amulet, starting the bidding at $1,000. Several VIP rooms sprang into action. A figure in a gorilla mask from one room bid $10,000. Furful, her eyes gleaming, countered, $11,000. The auctioneer acknowledged her bid, but the gorilla mask quickly upped the ante to $15,000. Arthur watched the back and forth, noticing Furful's frown deepening as the price climbed. Sensing she was nearing her limit at $20,000, he decided to step in. $30,000, Arthur called out, his voice firm. His bid drew surprised looks from Furful, Shuffle, and George. Even the gorilla-masked bidder seemed taken aback, his gaze shifting to Arthur's VIP room. Though he couldn't see inside, it was clear the new voice wasn't the woman who'd been bidding before. The auctioneer's gavel struck twice. "Sold to VIP room number 8 for $30,000. Arthur just smiled, shrugging off her thanks. "It's nothing." As they spoke, a veiled succubus entered their room, presenting the ancient amulet. Furful and Shuffle rushed over, admiring it with reverence. Arthur studied the amulet curiously. "So, what exactly does it do?" Furful hesitated. "To be honest, I'm not sure. But it can't be simple. It belonged to the third queen of my homeland, after all." Arthur nodded, examining the clearly ancient artifact. Shuffle chimed in, "Legend has it, this amulet was a gift from a king of the giants." "Giants?" Arthur's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Their discussion was cut short as the auction's main event began, the unveiling of the magical ring. The atmosphere in the auction house shifted palpably, from the gorilla-masked individual to the robed figures in the VIP rooms, from Lucy with Apollonia and her classmates to the representatives of the Solaris faith. All eyes locked onto the ring box. As the box opened, Jenny, the host, launched into her introduction. "The seller, who wishes to remain anonymous, is a pirate who acquired this ring at great cost. Many of his crew perished in the quest to obtain it." Her voice dropped to a dramatic whisper. "This ring, ladies and gentlemen, is said to bestow unparalleled authority and power upon its wearer." The room buzzed with excitement and tension. Arthur found himself leaning forward, despite his skepticism. Could this ring truly be as powerful as claimed? The higher-ups had sent me, a champion of the Solaris faith, to this lowly demon auction. My task, determine if the ring on offer was the one our church sought. Cardinal Virtue's words still rang in my ears. Verify if it's the ancient ring we're after. If not, track down the seller. Even if it's not our ring, its origin might lead us to the real thing. Interrogate the seller, then, offer him to the Lord. Those orders weighed on me as I watched the proceedings. The robed bishop beside me scrutinized the ring on stage. "Is it the one?" I asked, keeping my voice low. The bishop glanced between the ring and an ancient tome in his hands. After muttering an appraisal spell, he shook his head. "No, Champion Lance. It's just a common spatial ring from bygone days. If it's not what we seek, we should locate the seller," the bishop mused. "The host mentioned he's a pirate." A hint of disdain crept into his voice. "A sinner in need of cleansing, wouldn't you agree?" The Solaris representatives weren't the only ones to quickly realize the ring wasn't the ancient ring they sought. The Fallen Stars, loyal only to Demon King Luke Morningstar, also recognized it as a mere spatial ring. "Waste of time." "We're out," muttered a robed Fallen Star. Without another word, their group vacated their VIP room. The gorilla-masked individual from the Moon Goddess faith, under orders from the Lunar Queen, followed suit. Even the dwarven representatives of the Forge Father faith slipped away quietly, yet the cult members, less discerning, remained. Their excited voices filled the air as they vied for the spatial ring. In VIP room number 8, Arthur watched the bidding war with bemused detachment. Not joining in, boss? George asked, his arms laden with the ancient dwarven artifacts he'd won. Arthur snorted. Hundreds of thousands for that ring? No thanks. If it had the same power as the ones in Lord of the Rings, that pirate would have used it himself long ago, don't you think? Just common sense, Arthur continued, a hint of disdain in his voice. These bidders are swallowing every word hook, line, and sinker. If it's so obvious, George prodded, why'd you come to the auction for it? Arthur paused. Curiosity, I guess. But internally, he knew the ring wasn't from Lord of the Rings. It matched the description of a spatial ring he'd once read about in an ancient text. Still, he mused, a ring that could store items was magical in its own right. Just not the earth-shattering power some seemed to expect. Arthur and his group slipped out of the auction house unnoticed, the crowd's attention fixed firmly on the magical ring. Even the presence of popular Lord of the Rings actors like George, Furfel, and Shaffle, not to mention the infamous ex-Prince Arthur himself, went unremarked. The bidding war raged on, culminating in Lucy's victory at a staggering $500,000. As Lucy claimed her prize, Apollonia leaned in, whispering, Sis, was it really worth spending that much on a ring? Lucy scoffed. Of course, she said, eyeing the ring greedily. This will definitely boost my power. She slipped it on, excitement evident in her eyes. Apollonia's classmates watched intently, half expecting Lucy to suddenly manifest the legendary powers of ancient demons and transform into the demon queen right before their eyes. Lucy channeled her magical power into the ring, anticipation building, only to feel nothing. No surge of power, no earth-shattering abilities. Instead, her mind filled with unexpected information, a spatial storage of 0.25 cubic meters. Before anyone could speculate further, Lucy snapped. Leave me alone. Now. Their eyes widened in shock. Lucy's composure rarely cracked, she was known for her calm intelligence and beauty. They scurried away without another word. Once alone, Lucy's frustration boiled over. I can't believe I just blew $500,000 on this worthless trinket, she hissed. If it had been a spatial ring with significant storage, she might have swallowed her pride. But 0.25 cubic meters? It was practically useless. As she clenched her fists, thoughts of revenge against the ring seller swirled in her mind. What Lucy didn't know was that the seller was already regretting his decision to sell the ring. The pirate was on the run, constantly looking over his shoulder. Just as he reached his hideout, a tap on his shoulder made him freeze. Where are you off to? I thought we might have a chat, a young voice said. The pirate turned to face a handsome young man. Normally, he'd have scoffed at such a pretty boy, but the iron grip on his shoulder made him wince in pain. Let go of me, he stammered. The young man's smile never faltered. Why so nervous? We're here to help. It's quite an honor to offer yourself to Lord Solaris, after all. Gritting his teeth, the pirate reached for his revolver. Before he could pull the trigger, the young man snapped his wrist, sending the gun clattering to the ground. Who are you? The pirate gasped. I've never heard of Solaris worshippers being this cruel. Lance Ashford's smile widened. You don't need to know that. Just understand that you're very fortunate. Oh, you do? Wonderful. Then you'll be even more grateful for this opportunity. Lance muttered a spell, and the pirate crumpled unconscious. The bishop stepped out from the shadows. We need to move, Champion Lance. Our authority in these demon lands is limited. I know. Lance hoisted the pirate over his shoulder. A bus pulled up nearby, as if on cue. Lance and the bishop boarded the empty vehicle, and it drove off without a word. Hours after Lucy's ring purchase, the royal family gathered for dinner. Luke glared at his daughter, his voice laced with disappointment. I thought you were exceptional, but you're no different from a fool. He jabbed a finger in her direction. $500,000 on a useless ring? Were you even thinking? The Demon Queen, Luke's wife, attempted to intervene. Let it go, Your Majesty. It's just 500,000. She can earn that back quickly. Luke's eyes turned cold. Earn it back quickly? Huh. He snorted. If not for that lucky exiled son and his films, she wouldn't see that kind of money. Think carefully about your spending, Luke warned, or you might find yourself exiled too. The next day at Hellfire Studio, Arthur and his crew kicked off auditions for their next project. News of Hellfire Studio auditions for next film project had aspiring actors lining up in droves. In the wake of Lord of the Rings, Hellfire Studio was undeniably on the rise, but success, as Arthur well knew, rarely came without its share of hurdles. While Hellfire's ascent seemed unstoppable, the media was abuzz with countermoves from the industry giants. Titan Pictures and other major studios had just dropped bombshells of their own, announcing ambitious projects aimed at not just matching, but surpassing Lord of the Rings. The pushback didn't stop there. Famous singers and bands, signed to labels under these entertainment behemoths, were now actively discouraging their fans from supporting Hellfire Studio. It's been 2 days since I started auditions, but I'm still searching for actors to play Blondie, Angel Eyes, and Tuco. There's actual record of demons working as bounty hunters in Empirica's past, though most were half human, half demon rather than pure demons. For Angel Eyes, the outlaw, I'm looking to cast an elf. Despite elves' reputation for being peaceful, many rebelled and migrated to Empirica when it was still developing, especially on the West Coast. This time, I won't be acting in the film. With my new, cinematic vision ability, I want to focus solely on directing. So far, no luck finding anyone suitable for the lead roles. Then, in struts Damien Darkflame, sauntering into the audition studio like he owns the place, demanding to be cast as the lead. Hold up, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. If you want the lead, you'll need to audition like everyone else. That means getting in line. Damien's face contorted with indignation. Are you out of your mind? He jabbed a thumb at his chest. I'm Damien Darkflame. A demon superstar. I'm doing your little movie a favor by even considering it, and you have the gall to reject me? I stared at him, momentarily lost for words. Beside me, Klein and the others shifted uncomfortably. Klein leaned in, whispering urgently, Boss, what do we do? Damien's still a big name in the industry. An A-lister. I couldn't help but chuckle. A-list in the demon realm, maybe. I shook my head. Furful, Schaffel, even Imkrag have already left him in the dust, not just here, but globally. Klein fell silent, digesting this. Damien, growing impatient, pressed on. Well? What's it gonna be? I don't have all day to waste on this. Am I in or not? I met his gaze, my expression hardening. No, I said firmly. Back of the line. Everyone gets a fair shot here. Being, well, you, doesn't buy you any special treatment. Damien's face flushed with anger as he continued to argue. I'd had enough. With a subtle nod, I signaled the fiend demon security to escort him out. As Damien was led away, still protesting, I turned back to the waiting hopefuls. Right, let's get this audition back on track. At the Snake Agency office, an imp demon regarded the actor before him with indifference. I'm sorry, but I really can't find a role for you, Clint. Clint, a half-human, half-demon, looked worse for wear. His appearance spoke volumes, sleepless nights and missed meals evident in his haggard face. You're my agent, Ralph. Can't you find something for me? I'm really struggling here. Haven't eaten in days. Clint's voice was thin and weary, his exhaustion palpable. Ralph shrugged, unmoved. Sorry, Clint. Not much I can do. Why don't you look for other jobs while waiting for your big break? His tone was flat, devoid of sympathy. Clint sighed heavily. I can't. I've been job hunting for weeks. The few who hired me paid peanuts. It's not enough to live on. I really can't do anything for you, Clint, Ralph repeated, shrugging again. You've got to hang in there and keep looking. After a moment of silence, Clint perked up. Wait, what about that project you mentioned? The Exiled Prince's new film? Ralph grabbed a nearby newspaper. Oh, this? He snorted. I don't think you stand a chance there, Clint. He pointed at the headline. Look, even Damien Darkflame got the cold shoulder from the ex-prince. Damien lined up to audition and was rejected outright. Clint fell silent, eye scanning the headline and grainy photos. You don't have any luck there, Ralph shook his head, lighting a cigarette. No way Arthur would be interested in you. Clint knew Ralph was probably right. But after leaving Snake Agency, he set off for Furlan City anyway. Ralph might be right, but Clint figured taking a chance beat waiting for a big break that would likely never come. He was well aware that Snake Agency and Ralph were stringing him along, dangling false hope. 2 months of waiting, and not even a minor role had come his way through them. The audition's been running for a week now. I've managed to cast an elf named Levi Hayes for the outlaw, and for the ugly, I picked a dwarf who's just the right mix of scary and, well, ugly. My cinematic vision skill's been a godsend in spotting the right actors for each role, but Blondie? That's been a tough nut to crack. A few caught my eye, but cinematic vision told me they just wouldn't cut it in the role. I was starting to think I'd have to play Blondie myself when this actor shows up to audition. Clint Foster, he calls himself. Funny thing is, Clint's got a bit of a young Clint Eastwood look about him, same hair, eyes, and nose. But looks aren't everything. What matters is if he can pull off the role. I can see the hunger in his eyes, the desperation in his demeanor. Guy's clearly been through the ringer. Clint starts his scene, and I watch with interest. As the audition wraps up, I find myself nodding in approval. My cinematic vision kicked in, showing me flashes of Clint in various scenes, nailing the role. After a moment's consideration, my fingers tapping rhythmically on the arm of my chair, I made my decision. This Clint guy was our Blondie. Clint watched Arthur's expression, his heart in his throat. The silence from Arthur and the casting crew felt deafening. He needed this role. Desperately. Did I do okay? Clint's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. Arthur's smile caught everyone off guard. Looks like we've found our lead, he announced, surprising not just Clint, but everyone at the audition, including the actors still waiting in line. Arthur's film project had been under intense scrutiny from the start. The media had been circling like vultures, especially after the incident with Damien Darkflame. They'd had a field day reporting on how the famous actor had been escorted out, forced to line up, only to be rejected. So when news broke that some unknown actor had snagged the role Damien had coveted, the media pounced. Headlines screamed across papers and news sites, "Unknown face steals role from Damien Darkflame." When Damien caught wind of this, his reaction was explosive. In a fit of rage, he hurled a fireball at his agency's table and tossed a chair at his hapless manager. Naturally, Damien's meltdown became its own scandal, plastered across the media, further tarnishing his already bruised reputation. Clint Foster POV, I'm still reeling. Me, landing the lead role of Blondie? It's surreal. My agent's words echo in my head, you don't have any luck there. No way Arthur would be interested in you. Yet here I am, having done the so-called impossible, and as if that wasn't enough, ex-Prince Arthur drops another bombshell. He's offering me a contract with his Hellfire agency. Clint Foster, he says, eyeing me thoughtfully. Your profile says you're with Snake Agency. He pauses, then adds, how about joining my agency instead? I'll offer you an upfront payment of $40,000. I nearly choke on my drink. 40 fucking $1,000? Without missing a beat, I blurt out, I'm in. The enthusiasm in my voice surprises even me. It's a no-brainer, really. My current agency, my agent? They couldn't care less about me. So why not go with an agency that's willing to put 40 grand on the table? At last, after what felt like an eternity of searching, I've assembled the main cast for my movie. Take Benny Cave, the dwarf actor playing Tuco. He's 60, but you'd never guess it. Dwarves are known for their old looks, and at 60, Benny could pass for a teenager. The only giveaway is his intimidating demeanor, a far cry from the naivety of younger dwarves. Benny's perfect for the ugly, and not just because of his looks. He spent 15 years in the Aztec kingdom over in Empirica. Rubbed shoulders with old-timers who lived through the Wild West era. That first-hand knowledge of the Empirican Old West and Civil War times? It's gold. Then there's Lay River, our elf playing Angel Eyes. Those kind eyes of his live up to the angel part of his character's name. But he's playing the bad, and I can already see the audience's surprise when they realize this angel-faced elf is the villain. As the actors stepped into the VFX studio, their eyes widened in amazement. The place was a maze of ruins and spell markers. So this is the famous VFX studio where Lord of the Rings was made, Clint muttered, awe in his voice. Lay chimed in, I heard this place is worth millions. We're literally walking on a fortune right now. Wow, Clint breathed, the other cast members nodding in agreement. Benny, ever the skeptic, added, millions spent just for that Lord of the Rings movie? The ex-prince sure had guts to risk that much cash. It paid off though, one of the side actors pointed out. The film raked in so much, a few million in expenses seems like pocket change now. Benny sneered, that's 'cause it got lucky. What if it had flopped? Would have been millions down the drain. The others fell silent, unable to argue with the dwarf's blunt logic. As they walked through the corridor and into the main studio area, their jaws dropped. Without the illusions, the place looked surprisingly bare. They spotted Arthur with the production crew, tending to some horses and unicorns. He nodded as they approached. You're here. Good. He gestured to a nearby house shimmering with illusion magic. Head over there. Makeup and wardrobe will get you ready for the scene. The actors nodded, still taking in their surroundings. In one corner, crew members were pouring sand, prepping the set for the day's shoot. The cast emerged from the house, only to find themselves in what appeared to be a dusty old town. While astonished, they weren't entirely shocked. They'd expected some impressive illusions. Even old Benny was taken aback. He felt transported back to the towns of Aztec in the Empirican continent. Kicking at the ground, Benny watched sand swirl around his feet. This studio ain't half bad, he admitted, grudgingly impressed. You can film anywhere, all in one place. You got that right, Lay agreed, nodding. Arthur's voice cut through their wonderment, amplified by a megaphone. Alright, enough gawking. Let's get this show on the road. Seeing them so awestruck, I had to snap them out of it. We had filming to do. As we started shooting the opening sequence, Tuco's escape, I employed my heartstrings skill. It helped Benny and the others act more authentically. One take, and we had the scene in the bag. The combination of heartstrings and cinematic vision was potent stuff. I'd use them all day if I could, but I've got to be careful. These skills have their limits. If heartstrings was unlimited, what would be the point of good actors? I could turn even the worst performer into a star. But that's not the reality. After using it for one scene, I've only got about 4 more uses today. I used heartstrings again for Tuco's scene. Benny didn't even realize his emotions were being manipulated. The dwarf's pride had him convinced it was all his own talent. The other cast members, though, I could see it in their faces. They were starting to sense something was off. But I just had them brush it aside. It's a fine line I'm walking here. These skills are incredible tools, but I've got to use them wisely. Don't want to rely on them too much, or I might forget what real acting looks like. Third-person POV. A few days into filming The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the cast started noticing something off about the VFX studio. Sure, nailing tough scenes in one take was impressive, but the weird stuff happening on set, that was something else entirely. Actors shivering from sudden cold spells after wrapping up evening shoots. Personal items vanishing into thin air. Doors swinging open by themselves. It was getting to be a regular haunted house around there. Word spread quickly among the cast. Ghosts were having a field day messing with them. Most of the demon actors shrugged it off. Ghostly pranks were nothing new in their world. But for some, the random cold spots and other unexplained phenomena were starting to grate on their nerves. Clint got the worst of it one day, finding himself locked in a room. Help! I can't get out, he yelled, panic edging into his voice. Even Lay wasn't spared. Desperate for a bathroom break, he found himself pleading with an unseen prankster. Open this door, you piece of crap. I need to pee. These incidents piled up, and the actors kept bringing them to Arthur. His response? Ghosts? Don't sweat it. They're just having fun. You should have seen what they pulled during Lord of the Rings filming. The cast reluctantly accepted this explanation, deciding to grin and bear it. What Arthur didn't tell them was that the ghosts had actually ramped up their antics since Lord of the Rings. During filming, the set would suddenly turn frigid for no apparent reason. Arthur found himself constantly using his atmosphere control skill to ward off the chill. The cold was messing with the scene's atmosphere, and the shivering actors were struggling to stay in character. Klein approached Arthur, frustration evident in his voice. Boss, these ghosts are getting out of hand. How are we supposed to deal with them? Arthur rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. We can't exactly call in Solaris priests for a cleansing. Not after the Demonfather ruffled their feathers. He paused, considering their options. Our best bet is to scare them off somehow. Make them think twice about messing with us. Klein looked skeptical. Scare them? Boss, we can't even touch ghosts. How are we supposed to intimidate something we can't harm? Arthur sighed, his eyes fixed on a transparent interface only he could see. I might have a solution, Phantom Touch, a skill that grants the user the extraordinary ability to interact with ghosts and spirits on a physical level. By extending a hand, the user can reach out to ethereal beings, allowing for both communication and manipulation of ghostly energies. Arthur winced internally at the price tag, 4 million entertainment points. It was a steep cost, but as he watched another actor shiver from a ghostly cold spot, he knew he had to do something. These spectral shenanigans were threatening to derail the entire production. "Give me a few hours," he told Klein. "I think I can sort this out." Just hours after acquiring the skill, Arthur put it to use. As the ghosts began their usual pranks, leaving the actors helpless, everyone was stunned to see Arthur reach out and grab a previously invisible specter. "Ah!" The ghost shriek echoed through the studio. The production crew and cast watched in amazement as Arthur pulled the ghost into view, making it visible to all. They could only assume Arthur was using some powerful spell that not only allowed him to touch ghosts, but also made them visible to the naked eye. But Arthur wasn't done. He began plucking more ghosts from thin air, and to everyone's disbelief, he started tying their ghostly tails together. The ghosts' cries of fear and confusion filled the air as they gaped at Arthur in terror. Arthur pointed at the tangled mass of spirits, his voice stern. "You guys deserve a spanking." The entire studio watched in awe as Arthur proceeded to discipline the troublesome spirits. It was a sight none of them ever expected to see. Their director, literally taking ghosts to task. As the spectral wails died down, one of the actors whispered, "Remind me never to get on the boss's bad side."